Strawberry Cream Cupcake and Murder, a Dana Sweet Cozy Mystery, Book 1. Written by Anne S. Marie. Narrated by Skye Alley. Chapter 1. Grandma Ray's Key Ingredients for a Good Day. 1 cup of gratitude, 1 spoonful of hope, 1 ounce of laughter, a dash of resilience, a sprinkle of service to others, 1 cup of integrity, 1 cup of self-respect, 1 good trusted friend, 2 is optional, a whole lot of love for yourself, 1 cupcake with a tasty whipped cream frosting with a cup of kind words to sweeten your day. A nostalgic smile touched Dana Sweet's lips as she remembered Grandma Ray's key ingredients for a good day. Dana drove her blue Ford Escort on 401 eastbound toward the small town of Berry Cove, Ontario. She was finally leaving the state of New York behind her. She thought about the sweet family recipe book her grandmother left to her in her will. The last page of the recipe book had the poem on the key ingredients for a good day attached to it. Though this was her final drive from New York with the last of her stuff, she couldn't help but feel a pang of nervousness. Was she making the right decision to come back? She hardly knew the town. She hadn't lived there since her childhood. An uneasy feeling settled inside Dana, but she swept it out of her mind. It's only nerves, girl. You're just worried about what people would say if they found out what happened in New York, Dana murmured to herself as the wind blew her shiny brunette locks. The car window was cracked open slightly. The sun was so bright she reached into the glove compartment to pull out her sunglasses. She couldn't believe how warm and sunny it was, considering it was now fall. She thought about what her new life would be like now. In a small town, conformity was the law. Being different could sometimes make you an outsider, and she intended to fit in, even though the newly revamped cafe idea was, well, different. She had changed her Nana's beloved Cupcake Café since it was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy after her death. She'd met the employees a few months ago and had implemented a couple of big changes. Initially, they had been distrustful of her out-there ideas. The icing-heavy cupcakes served with a spoon, and the messages at the bottom of the cupcakes and on the wrappers. But those ideas had managed to make the cafe popular again, and they'd come around. Well, some of the employees had come around to her ideas. Nana had always told her that people were like layers of cakes with many different ingredients. Some people were sweeter than others. You've got to know how to move good with people, Grandma Ray would always say. Life had many layers too. Some sweet stuff, some bitter stuff, all mixed in to make a tasty cake. Like baking powder made a cake rise, but you sure as heck wouldn't want to taste it on its own. Boy, Dana needed a scoop of confidence right now. Speaking of which, her late grandmother, Grandma Ray, always told her that life is like a delicious scoop of ice cream. You've got to enjoy it before it melts. And Grandma Ray also used to preach that the word stressed was dessert spelled backwards. It depended on what you did with the letters. It's not what happened to you, it's what you decided to do with it that counted. Life was 10% of stuff that happened to you and 90% of how you responded to it, she would discourse. Plain and simple. Of course, Grandma Ray lived through 3 divorces, 9 layoffs, 2 wars, and 3 grandkids, so she knew what she was talking about. She had always been free-spirited, youthful, and full of life, even at 85. Dana's heart squeezed in her chest. Oh, how she missed her Nana so much. She missed the evenings cozying up by the warm, crackling fire at the fireplace, while sitting on the antique Victorian-era sofa with quilted cushions, while her grandma told funny stories, and often with the most outrageous twists in the end. Or Grandma Ray would tell famous tales about the lessons of life. Little did Dana know then that they were having more than just family fun time. They were creating happy memories that would linger sweetly like the scent of freshly baked cinnamon rolls. That was what life consisted of. Happy moments, or whatever we did to capture and sweeten each moment with those we care about. Grandma would always tell Dana and her cousins, if life gives you lemons, sweeten them and make lemonade. Don't come to me with any sour faces because you bit into a raw lemon. She would playfully tease them. God rest her wonderful soul. She also told Dana that you need to have something to live for, or else what would be the point? If you don't believe in yourself, who do you think would? If you were not your own best friend, why would anyone else want to be? And that was the truth. She also told her that sometimes you need the lows to appreciate the highs in life. And sometimes life didn't unfold perfectly as planned. Well, she was going to enjoy her life for once. "Trust me, child," Grandma Ray once told Dana. "If you don't have anything to worry about, you don't have anything to live for. If life were always easy, where would be the adventure?" Yes, life was always an adventure to Grandma Ray. And Berry Cove was a small town filled with the best walking trails and wooded forests and scenery, and was always a fun adventure from what Dana could remember from her childhood visiting the area. Grandma Ray died a few months ago, around the same time Dana's fiancé bailed out on her. He'd found someone better in his books. He'd been seeing a rich socialite, one of Dana's former classmates and study buddy. He had his high-profile life in the city as a hotshot advertising executive now, and he didn't think she was good enough for him now that they had both finished college. That was what happened. Still, Grandma Ray's words of wisdom on moving forward and how life was an adventure lingered in Dana's mind right now. The words caused her lips to curve into a smile as she drove past the sign on the highway that read, "Welcome to Berry Cove, Ontario." Thank God she had her dual Canadian and American citizenship. She didn't want to be anywhere near her ex right now. She needed a break from the competitive circle of acquaintances they'd accumulated, a change of scenery, and moving from the busy city life to a small town on the lake scented with the fresh fragrance of berries in the air and the sounds of birds chirping in the trees, instead of sirens and honking horns in traffic with city congestion, was a perfect change for her. Dana inhaled the sweet cottage country air as she drove on the lakeside with a breathtaking view of the waterfront. Though sadness filled her heart at the thought that Grandma Ray was no longer around, she was glad to be moving back. After the funeral a few months ago, she and her Aunt Petunia went through Nan's stuff, which was hard to do, but at the same time, she felt closer to her. It was as if her spirit was still in the home, her warmth and the scent of her perfume. She always wore Chanel No. 5. God, she missed Nana Ray. Dana thought as she pulled up to the gas station off the highway. "Well, welcome back, stranger," Gertie Sue called out to Dana at the gas station when Dana had pulled up to refill her tank. Gertie Sue came out of her dark gray Mercedes-Benz ready to pump gas. She was a rich widow whose husband No. 2 left her very comfortable when he died. But she was also known as the town gossip. Dana knew better than to divulge any information about herself that she didn't want to see the front page of the Berry Cove Gazette. "Morning, Miss Sue. You're looking very well," Dana smiled cheerfully. "And so are you, honey child. It must have been awful for you with your grandma passing on like that, right after your breakup with Ramon." Gertie Sue clucked her tongue. "That is too bad, sweetie. How are you coping, child?" Always the drama queen, Gertie Sue tilted her head to the side, her large hoop earrings dangling off her earlobe. "I'm good, thanks. Really, starting a new chapter in my life." Dana flushed. Waves of anxiety swept through her, but she wasn't about to let Gertie Sue, the town gossip, privy to this bit of information. Her source of anxiety right now was the cafe. This would be the week of the official grand opening for the cozy Cupcakes Café, and Dana had many concerns, such as, would the newly revamped business fly? Would everyone catch on? What if it tanked? Then what would she do? Dana had withdrawn her savings to save her grandmother's business after her death, and she'd already vacated her New York apartment. She only had a month to turn things around and hopefully improve sales. Since her grandmother's ill health and eventual death, business at the cafe had slowed down. The cafe had been everything to her late grandmother. Dana was more determined than ever to make this work. She wanted to do this to honor her grandmother's memory. Grandma Ray used to love uplifting people. She would always offer a cute saying or words of wisdom to her customers, so Dana thought revamping the Cupcakes Café would be the best way to honor her. Customers could get a warm treat served with sweet words of encouragement, only it would be written on cute little cupcake wrappers instead of spoken by her Grammy. She hoped this would work. Dana tried to throttle the fluttering in her stomach. Those dang nerves again. Since her ex Ramon ditched her, she knew this would be a great opportunity to restart her life and think about her future. Nothing happens before its time, her grandmother would always proffer. Oh, good! Good to hear you're starting a new chapter, honey. Gertie Sue looked dubious at first, then smiled. Dana observed the woman for a moment. It looked as if Gertie Sue was dying to ask something else, but bit down on her lip instead. Oh, and what a fantastic idea for the cafe! Everyone's been talking about the new changes, Gertie Sue continued while she finished pumping gas. They are? Dana asked as she proceeded to the driver's side of her vehicle. Child, where did you come up with such a crazy idea? Crazy idea? You know what I mean. It's, what is that young kids used to say, sick, meaning good? Or is that bad, meaning good? Dana smiled sheepishly. Thank you so much, Gertie Sue. I worked as a copywriter at an ad agency in New York, and of course, Grandma Ray was full of wisdom and always offered her wonderful sayings. You can say that again. That woman was never at a loss for giving words of encouragement with those proverbs of hers. Dana's stomach fell. Her heart squeezed inside her chest. I know, she said quietly, missing her grandma. Good luck with the grand opening. When is it again? This Friday. Friday? Of course it is, Gertie Sue sighed. What's wrong? Oh, nothing. It's just that, Gertie Sue paused and glanced around her to see if anyone else was listening within earshot. Well, Bianca Baxter and her lot aren't exactly too happy about the changes you've made. Bianca Baxter, but she has her own cafe. Tell me about it, child. Well, there's plenty of room for everyone in this town to sell their goods. I mean, we're specializing in cupcakes and nutritious smoothies and pastries. The Baxters do mostly muffins and bagels and coffee. It's a different focus, you know. I'm not sure why they see us as a threat. I hear you. Gertie Sue walked over to Dana and leaned closer to her. Uh-oh. That was always Gertie Sue's got some gossip to tell you move. You didn't hear this from me, Gertie Sue added with a slight smirk. But child, you better watch out. I hear that Mrs. Baxter been yapping about how she would stop at nothing to keep being the #1 cafe in Berry Cove. The #1 cafe in Berry Cove? Dana swallowed hard and placed her hands belligerently on her hips. She lifted her chin and boldly met Gertie Sue's gaze. She stood up to the bullies at the ad agency that she worked at in New York. Heck, even her ex-fiancé's mistress. She could stand up to anyone, even a small-town competitor in Berry Cove. Well, you only visited here as a kid a few times, but let me tell you this. From someone who lived here for her whole life in the small town, folks are kind and caring and willing to help out at the drop of a hat. There's nothing like good old-fashioned small-town hospitality. No one does it better than Berry Cove. I know, Dana said, her tone softening as she fondly remembered the days she visited as a child and teenager and how much cozier the close-knit community appealed to her. It felt so much different than the big cities. In the small town, everyone knew each other by name, even the mailman and the pharmacist, unlike the big city where you were just a nameless face in a crowd. But don't you get it twisted, girl, Gertie Sue continued. I'm only telling you this because I like you, and I liked your grandmother a lot. She was good people, you know. I know. And? Dana probed, wanting to hear more about the possible challenges she might have to face by some of the folks in Berry Cove. And some folks don't like people who are different in the small towns. Conformity is good here. Rocking the boat isn't always a good thing. Some folks would stop at nothing to keep things the way they like 'em, not to mention those Baxters. They like to think they own the town. Their bakery has been in their family for 95 years, not long after the first berry farmers established Berry Cove as a town back in the late 1890s. Now they're running on tough times like everyone else in the recession, and since you've made those changes at the cafe and all, their customers have been flocking to your store to see what all the hype is about. They have? Dana asked, surprised as she leaned back against her car with her arms folded across her chest. Gertie Sue nodded slowly and dramatically, arching a brow. They have, child. Now, it's good that you have your auntie and your cousin Katie helping you out at the cafe, and that you kept your grandmother's old staff. But just be very careful not to step on any toes around here. You mean I should be careful not to step on any egos around here? Dana spoke softly, blowing a puff of air to lift her bangs off her face. Gertie Sue winked emphatically. Just as Gertie Sue said her goodbye and air blew her a kiss, Dana grinned and shook her head. She watched as Gertie Sue drove off. She couldn't believe Grandma's cafe was the talk of the town now. Grandma would have been very proud, or perhaps surprised. Her cafe was modest and cozy, but hadn't been as packed as other cafes in the town square. Dana's cousin Katie, who had been working at the cafe with Grandma Ray since the beginning, had called Dana while she was in New York to tell her that the cafe had seen a burst in customers since the changes. By fixing the fireplace in the cafe, among other things, like adding those motivational sayings to the cupcake wrappers and creating a cozy environment where friendly, lively fun was the name of the game, things had begun to turn around. However, the cafe owed a lot of debt, and Dana was counting on the grand reopening to really boost revenue. Still spending some money from her savings to add the new fancy cupcake wrappers with designs and a lovely message written on them, and then adding the cutlery so customers could eat their fresh whipped cream frosting-topped cupcake with a spoon was beginning to pay off. The crazy idea became the talk of the town, and even the local news picked it up. The whole idea even went viral on YouTube, and Dana couldn't wait to rush back into town to start full-time, focusing on bringing the business up to speed. Who knew her idea would take off like that? In her former job, her boss at the ad agency always told her she thought out of the box. The whole situation seemed so surreal, Dana thought, as she finished paying with her credit card at the gas pump by sliding her card in. Her heart flipped over in her chest. For once in her life, something was going right. She was about to save her Nana's business, and she really appreciated the help of Katie and her Auntie Naya, whose real name was Auntie Petunia, but no one was allowed to call her that. Katie and Aunt Naya and her husband, Uncle Merv, were all from her father's side of the family. Ma Ray was her mom's mom, so technically they were not related to Grandma Ray. Grandma Ray had left the cafe to Dana in her will and left some items for Aunt Naya and her family too, since she took them in as her family. Katie was all too happy to find a job working at the cafe with the rest of the staff in many different roles, from barista to part-time baker, whenever anyone called in sick. It was a good thing she knew all the aspects of the business. Though Dana hadn't had a chance to work in the cafe as a serving staff, she was managing the business side and was lucky that the baker and other staff stayed on after Grandma Ray's passing. She was glad they had her back as she took care of the bills while she was still in New York. Dana was about to get back into her car when she heard a voice call out to her from behind. "Oh, hey there." It was Mike, the mail guy. His uncle Stephen was the head mailman, but took Mike under his wings to deliver mail with him in the district. "Hey there," Dana said. "It must be nice to have Sundays off," she teased him. He looked so different in his jeans and blue t-shirt. She was used to seeing him in his mail carrier shorts whenever he delivered mail to her grandma when she was visiting. Mike had short, curly blonde hair and piercing blue eyes, and always seemed to blush. "Thanks." He had a cupcake piled high with whipped cream frosting, and the familiar decorative wrapping with a fun saying on the side. "Let me guess, you were at the CCC, right?" Dana smiled. CCC had been the common acronym for Cozy Cupcakes Café for the past few weeks now. She felt a pang of guilt for not stopping at the cafe first. But after a long journey driving in from New York State across the border, she really wanted to head home first and shower, then go to the cafe later to see how everybody was doing. She believed in having good managerial practices and always taking good care of her staff. She only prayed things would continue going in the right direction and sales would pick up so she could afford to keep them on and pay them. She also needed to take care of all the supplier debts and overdue utility bills the cafe owed. "This is delicious," he said. "Your grandma would be so proud of you, Dana. Good on you." "Thanks, but I haven't really changed any of her wonderful recipes. It's still Grandma Ray's famous recipes, though I'll be adding some new ones to the menu soon." "Good for you. Can't wait. You know, everyone's talking good about the new changes. And look at this," he said, reading the saying on his shiny blue wrapper. "A smile is like icing on a cupcake." Dana gushed. "You know, this is the second one I had this morning. The other one read, what was it again? 'In the buffet of life, friends are the dessert,'" Dana added for him. "That's right. Where do you come up with them?" he asked. "We use common proverbs or sayings that Grandma Ray would often quote," she said. "You know, before, I used to just toss wrappers. Now they're like fortune cookies, he said, and I like the touch with a spoon to eat them with so they're not messy. Cool. Dana smiled. A warm feeling crept inside her. This made it all worth it. She really hoped she could save the cafe. Later, Dana pulled up at the Victorian at 123A Berry Lane. A warm smile touched her lips again. This was her final move back to Berry Cove. She'd given up the lease on her apartment in New York, and she'd moved in some of her stuff slowly over the past couple of months, so this was now officially her new residence. There was no turning back now. Aunt Naya was supposed to meet her here soon. She hadn't seen her in over a month, since her aunt had been in Florida looking after some of her rental properties and non-paying tenants. She hoped her auntie was all right. Aunt Naya was always the wealthy, extravagant lady. Always had the latest designer duds and tricked-out manicures and pedicures. Looked half her age, even at 60. One would never know by her taut skin, auburn-dyed hair, and youthful makeup and attire. Her auntie was also a yoga fanatic and loved to go out on the town with her girlfriends, too. Her accountant husband, Uncle Merv, who worked for a Fortune 500 company, was nearing retirement now and was more down-to-earth and watched every penny. Dana grabbed her luggage and some boxes out of her trunk and carried them to the front door of the Victorian. She then opened the door and dragged her stuff into the foyer, plopping them down on the hardwood floor of the narrow hallway. She was greeted by the soft purring of her favorite little four-legged friend, Truffles, Grandma Ray's loving ginger-hair Persian cat she left to Dana and Katie in her will. Truffles meant the world to Dana. She was a very special kitty. Grandma Ray had rescued her from the Berry Cove Pet Rescue. She'd been abandoned by her previous owners. Luckily, Dana's Nana had nursed her back to good health. She was a feisty little four-legged feline who was deservedly pampered. "Hey, sweetie," Dana said. "Good to see you again. Guess you're here to stay." Truffles immediately hurried to her and wrapped herself around Dana's leg, her tail wagging animatedly. Dana scooped her up in her arms and hugged her to her chin, stroking her behind her ears as the kitty purred her approval. There was nothing like being greeted by the best friend a girl could ever have. Even though it had been a few weeks since she'd seen Truffles, there was a cool connection between them. The scent of fresh pine filled the air. She smiled, thinking of how sweet it was for Katie to clean up before she arrived. As Dana walked further into the home, she felt as if she was walking into a house in 1890, the way her grandmother kept only vintage stuff in the home. It was kind of cool, though. Her Nana's house had so much character. She was very sentimental. She once told Dana that growing up in the early days was so much fun and simpler than nowadays. She had longed for the other life. People lived elegantly and leisurely back then. Life seemed so much cozier, her Nan had said. Nana even had an old vintage phone, a Victorian-era design of oak wood and brass. It was so cool. It was like stepping back into history. Dana decided to cherish that and keep it as is, even after Nan's passed away. Victorian-style furniture inspired by the Tudor, Gothic, and Elizabethan filled the home. Most of the furniture was made from mahogany and rosewood and oak wood, which were popular materials for furniture, with decorated curves and style back in the old days. Dana glanced around at the gorgeous, historic-themed family room. Truffles climbed down off Dana and roamed to her favorite spot by the fireplace in her own basket. The family room had sideboards, small lamp tables, and a display cabinet. A Victorian couch sat in the corner with wide and high-backed oak wood trim on the back and arms. There was a couch and side chairs by the fireplace. The side tables were covered with fabric and had a plant and arranged books. Vintage cushions made the chairs cozy. There was Grandma Ray's favorite rocking chair sitting by the fireplace, which Dana wanted to keep and cherish her memory. It was almost as if she were there watching over her girls in the home. Dana just wasn't ready to make any drastic changes to the home yet. It had only been a few months now since Nana's passing. That was way too soon, and Katie agreed with her. Dana remembered the days cozying up with her Nana in the rocking chair while Nana read her a book just before bedtime, along with a mug of hot chocolate and whipped cream topping sprinkled with cinnamon. She noticed the upholstered backs of the chairs were beginning to show wear. She would have to get them professionally cleaned. She plumped herself down on the thick and soft cushions, hugging one to her chest. She noticed the cushions seemed more worn down than before. Attention to detail had always been Dana's thing. It was as if someone had been there sitting on them. Still, she felt her Nana's warm and protective presence there more than anything else. Dana heard the key turn in the lock and clunking sound of heels on the oak wood floor. "Dana! Dana, is that you?" Aunt Petunia came in with her bags. "Aunt Naya!" Dana got up off the couch. Dana and her auntie hugged for a moment. "I am so thrilled you're finally staying here. No more going away to New York. Welcome back, darling. I just got back in town myself. Katie said you'd be coming straight here first." "It's great to be back, Auntie. How was Florida?" She observed her auntie, noting her long nails and red hair and her lovely tan. But something was different. Something was definitely off about her auntie. She observed the woman closely. Lovely bright red hair, check. Manicured nails, check. Real jewels, check. But her handbag didn't match what she was wearing. It had loose strings on the seams for one thing. Her bags used to be the flashiest thing she wore. Always a name brand, Chanel, Hermes, or Vuitton. Her auntie always told her that a bag was the one attire a woman wore all the time, and status was everything. Every woman wanted to look great and feel great. Their hair, nails, shoes, and handbag had to be epic. Especially their bag, since they logged half their life including forms of identification and all their important personal and private stuff in their bags. It was almost an extension of them. Everything else was optional. Just as clothes could make a man, so could a bag make a lady, Aunt Naya would always say. Not that Dana always agreed with her, but she always loved looking at her latest bag from her collection. Dana would never catch her auntie in a fanny pack. She was one of those uber-stylish fashionistas. Today she was sporting a cheap knockoff. That was so unlike her auntie, who was used to finer quality things. "Aunt Naya, I am sorry to tell you this, but your Louis Vuitton bag is a fake. I hope you didn't pay too much for it. You know, it's one of the most counterfeited designer bags." My, you have always been the observant child, haven't you? Nothing gets past you, does it? That's what I always love about you, your attention to detail." "My attention to detail?" Dana echoed. "No one else could tell. And I guess that website you're running is rubbing off on you too. You've got to always keep your eyes sharp." "Oh, that." Dana felt sheepish. "It's more a hobby than a business. Something I'd developed a while back to help me relieve stress when I was working at my former day job in advertising." "Don't downplay it, child. It's wonderful. What is it, some sort of mystery blog, right? I read a story on it once and did one of those puzzles on there." "Thanks, Auntie. It's an online mystery riddles blog." "Oh, right. The Fox, right?" Dana grinned. "It's called the Mystery Fox Riddles blog. You remember how Grandma Ray loved to solve mystery riddles to keep her mind active and all?" "Oh, that's right." Dana almost choked with emotion. Grandma Ray had encouraged me to publish the mystery stories and riddles I'd created. She told a few friends in her bridge club who got interested, and that's how it all began. It's only been a year, and I publish a few riddles a month. I don't get too many blog hits, though, but as long as I get a few visitors on the blog, that makes it all worth it." "Child, I think it's wonderful. Keeping busy keeps you alive and kicking, as they say." Dana smiled. She enjoyed creating fun riddles on her blog when she had the chance. She would often begin with a little mystery short story or riddle with a whodunit type of vibe, and the hidden answer at the end. A few readers have asked if she would publish more frequently in the past, but now that she was helping to run her Nan's old cafe, she didn't know if she'd even have the time now. "Okay, now are you going to tell me what's going on here, Auntie? That is so not like you to wear imitations of anything. You always talk down to people who wore fakes. Not that I could ever afford a bag like that. A real one, that is." "Well, you may not know this, but Merv has been going through a pretty rough time. He got laid off just before he was due to retire." "Oh, no. I'm so sorry to hear that," Dana said, her tone filled with sadness. "Thank you, darling. He bought me a lovely designer bag years ago and paid a fortune for it to make it, but since he got laid off, I couldn't tell him that I sold it to help make ends meet. I'm not used to not having money flowing in. I gave up my career to raise the kids and he was the one working. Now he's lost it all." "That's awful," Dana said. "You know a man's pride means the world to him, right?" she said. "I know." Dana said softly. Well, I sold some of my other designer stuff, and then I went and got some fakes for a small fraction of the cost. But of course he can't tell the difference. Thank goodness I'm not married to you. Dana laughed nervously. What was going on? Everybody she knew seemed to be falling on tough times. Well, Dana wasn't sure if it was a blessing or a curse that she paid close attention to details. That was always her thing, wasn't it? That's how she knew that her ex had cheated on her. The telltale signs. People were creatures of habit. They did the same things in a routine that was comfortable to them, unless something drastic happened to them. It wasn't like her auntie to buy cheap handbags. She used to be a fashion designer back in her day. She had an obsession with expensive handbags, designer bags. So seeing her with a cheap knockoff didn't cut it for Dana. The real Louis Vuitton used a specific stitch pattern, a certain number of stitches at the top, and the patterns were always evened up. This knockoff did not have those same trademark qualities, for one thing. I can't believe Aunt Naya and Uncle Merv are going through tough times, Dana said to Katie later that evening in the kitchen. What's been going on here? First, my grandmother's cafe might sink into bankruptcy unless we can make a huge success with a grand reopening. Now Uncle Merv lost his job, and Aunt Naya is selling her prized handbag collection to make ends meet? Well, she has to pay the mortgage on her Florida rentals, you know. Her tenants have lost their jobs and can't pay the rent. Not to mention their home here, too, Katie said, chowing down on the last of her spaghetti and meatballs. Dana was making Grandma Ray's favorite recipe, a warm apple pie smoothie for dessert for them to chow down. They were planning to have it by the fireplace while catching up with business at the cafe. But right now, Dana had to talk about the family's personal business. Dana chopped up 2 apples and placed them in the blender, along with a cup of distilled water. She then added a 1/4 tablespoon of vanilla extract, a 1/4 tablespoon of cinnamon, and a tablespoon of maple syrup, then closed the blender. Well, I'm sure glad you're holding down the fort at the cafe. What would Grandma Ray have done without you? It was good that you'd worked with her over the years in the business. Hey, it's nothing, cuz. She was like a real grandmother to me. If it weren't for her giving me the job after my divorce, I don't know what I would have done when I moved back to Berry Cove. She was a real gem. Showed me how to run the cafe business in every area, from serving customers to making treats and everything. I only wish I had the good business management sense that you have to handle the financial everything. I'm just glad that between you and me, we can keep Grandma Ray's legacy alive and keep her faithful customers happy. Dana smiled warmly. Thanks, cuz. Yes, let's hope we can do this. After Dana blended the ingredients into a smooth mixture, she then poured it out into 2 microwavable mugs, then propped 1 cup at a time in the microwave for a couple of minutes. The girls then treated themselves by the fireplace with their warm apple pie smoothie, topped with a bit of whipped cream and a spoon to scoop it all up. It was just like having an apple pie with the same cozy taste without all the long work and baking. The girls talked about officially introducing it on their menu and all the other plans they had for their customers. She only hoped that things would go smoothly at the cafe, but there was a nudging feeling that something was just not right at the Cozy Cupcakes. What was it? What was that sinking feeling about? Chapter 2. The following morning, Dana woke up to the soft purring of her kitty Truffles. "Oh, you miss Grandma Ray, don't you, sweetie?" "So do I," she said as she pulled the quilted duvet off her and climbed out of bed, slipping her recently pedicured feet into her cozy pink slippers. Yes, today would have been her birthday if she were still here with us, right? Dana swallowed hard. Her heart skipped a beat thinking about it. She then scooped up her furry 4-legged friend and cuddled her to her cheek. There was nothing like being greeted by a furry family member first thing in the morning. Truffles purred again, indicating that she somehow understood what Dana was saying and agreed with her. Just then, Dana felt a slight chill come over her and the sweet scent of perfume. If she was not mistaken, it smelled like Grandma Ray's favorite perfume. "No, that's just my imagination," she said to herself, stroking Truffles' soft fur around her ears. Truffles leaned into her, enjoying the affection. Right now, she felt alone in the big old Victorian. It was a good thing Katie had moved in after Grandma Ray passed away. Katie was already at the cafe before opening to get the cakes and pies going with the morning staff. Dana would join them soon. The Victorian was a big home, too much space for one person to live alone. Perhaps she could turn it into some sort of rooming house. No, she couldn't do that. She wondered how Grandma Ray managed to live in it alone after her husband or husbands passed away and her kids grew up and left home. But Dana guessed that back in the day people loved lots of space. Unlike today where everyone was downsizing and the furniture wasn't as grand and luxurious as it had been in the past. TVs back in the day were huge and space-occupying, unlike the flat screens you put up on the wall today. Telephones were grand too. Buffets were all too common to place your finer dishes in, and there was room for everything. A grand study, a piano room, a family room, a dining room, and of course, a maid and butler's quarters. Dana grinned to herself, thinking of how life had changed for everyone over time. Most people had electronic books these days. Very few kept grand libraries or held grand parties. Perhaps it was also because today most people were just too busy. A little later, Dana arrived at the cozy Cupcakes Café, admiring the new signs. She drew in a deep breath. The grand opening was later in the week. She hoped that it would all go well, according to plan. "Morning, everyone," she said cheerfully. She noticed they were wearing the new orange aprons she had designed with the new logo on them. CCC. Sweet treats with happy thoughts. Inga, the baker, had just placed a tray of cupcakes out at the counter behind the cashier. She then stopped and gave Dana a dark look. There was certainly nothing happy going on with her this morning. What was that all about? Did I say good morning the wrong way? What? Dana swallowed hard. What is it? Did you read the Gazette this morning? Inga said sharply in her thick Russian accent, rolling her R's. No. Why? Dana's heart galloped like a racehorse. Oh no. Now what? Inga handed Dana the newspaper over the counter. It was 7 o'clock in the morning, and the cafe had just opened in time for the early Monday morning crowd. Katie was in the back in the kitchen with the other staff. Dana's eyes widened in shock. She was reading the words, but nothing was making any sense. It all seemed like gibberish for all she knew. The Berry Cove Gazette, Food and Wine Restaurant Reviews by Brad F. Jackson. The Cozy Cupcakes Café is an embarrassing joke, a pitiful attempt to sell cupcakes with tacky gimmicks. Unlike the Baxter's Cafe, it looks as if the cafe goodness died with its original owner, Ma Ray. R.I.P. Skip this one. Dana couldn't read any further. Heat rushed to her chest. She felt as if she was going to faint. What? She barely squeezed the word out of her throat. Never mind that jerk. He should have made a disclosure that he's engaged to Bianca Baxter, our competitor. Katie offered emotional support as she stepped out into the front with a tray of warm strawberry cream cupcakes. And what really sucks is that we delivered some of our specials to their team this morning at the Gazette. Hypocrites. That moron. How could he say those things? Inga added. And it's all in print now. People might think it's true. How could he? That two-face? I thought he enjoyed our cupcakes. They request that we deliver to his team every morning, right? Well, yes. They also get muffins from the Baxters, but the team loves our cupcakes. That's what you call sour grapes, a patron added as she plumped her bag on the counter. I'll have the strawberry cream cupcake, please, and a double-double. She placed her order, and Katie rang it up and grabbed her treats. Dana stood there with her jaw still open, still clutching the newspaper and glancing at the review page. Her mind was in a turbulent spin. She felt heartsick that Brad was tarnishing her grandmother's memory like that. Well, I'm supposed to speak with the ad team this morning about our campaign this week, Dana added, trying to sound brave as the customers filed into the cafe. I'm going over there to deliver some original artwork for the poster. I really hope I don't bump into Brad. I hope you do, Inga said. And when you get there, make sure to serve him with a piece of your mind along with a piece of his morning cake. Inga waved the spatula in the air at Dana. Her eyes were narrowed like daggers. She glanced down at the poster she held in her hand. The motto was clear in dripping chocolate fonts. Tasty treats with warm words to jumpstart your day. Well, she wasn't expecting any warm words from the Gazette this morning. Later in the morning, at 9 o'clock, Dana hurried along the quiet road toward the town square, which was pretty much the heart of Berry Cove, filled with stores that were Victorian converted houses. The street seemed quiet, except for the rustling of the leaves. So unlike the busy city. She thought she saw the bushes near the monument rustle, but that must have been her imagination. She passed the center monument in the middle and bumped into Mike, the mail guy. She didn't even see him coming. "Hey there, you all right?" Mike said, picking up something that Dana had inadvertently bumped out of his hand. "Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I wasn't concentrating." Dana felt even worse now. Great. Now she would be known as the bumbling baker, too. "Looks like you were in a daze there." "I know, I've just got a lot on my mind. Some business to take care of at the Gazette. I'm placing an ad for the grand opening this week." "All right, nice. Mike looked nervously at his watch. "Well, I'd better get going now. I'm going to be late starting my rounds." "Your rounds?" Dana noticed he was in uniform but didn't have any of his delivery mail bags with him. Perhaps he had delivered a special parcel to the Gazette, since it looked as if that building was where he was coming from. Mike then hurried off and got into his car that was parked on the cobbled roadside and started his engine and pulled out. Dana shrugged and proceeded toward the old building in the center of the town square, which housed the Gazette, among other offices. The Gazette, like many of the businesses in the town square, was situated in a grand old Victorian-built row house. She opened the gate and entered the terrace and rang the doorbell to be buzzed inside. Once inside the building, she could smell the scent of pine on the polished oak wood floors in the grand foyer. The reception area was empty. The team was no doubt in their Monday morning team meeting. She walked on the floor as it made a slight creaking sound that made her realize just how much she loved the character of old houses and buildings. Her shoes made a clunking sound as she made her way over to the reception desk to ring the bell. This was so different from those modern corporate offices in New York with their marble floors. "Help!" someone called out before she could reach the bell. "He's dead! He's dead!" Dana's heart thumped hard in her chest. She looked ahead and saw a woman dressed in a blue cleaning uniform on the landing of the second level, waving her hands about, trying to get attention. She hurried toward her. "Is everything all right?" "Come quickly!" The woman was frantic. "What is it?" "It's Senor Brad. He's... "Oh, no." Dave, the manager of the editorial department, and the rest of the team who were in the boardroom came flying out of the room at the same time. "What the hell happened here?" "He's..." Dana's tongue felt heavy all of a sudden. So did her heart and her breathing. She felt her pulse stop. "Dead." She finally finished her sentence. Her eyes were wide, and her jaw fell open as she looked at Brad slumped over on his desk, a cup of coffee turned over, spilling on the side of the desk, and a half-eaten strawberry cream cupcake topped with a high frosting with a spoon dug into it from the cozy Cupcakes Café, right there by his left hand. There was a strange scent that filled the air. Brad wore a sweet yet strong cologne scent, and then there was a wrapper that was clear as day in front of her, with a message from the cafe. Only it was not one of their usual messages. Dana noticed as she glared closely. Someone had altered it with a black marker. Her heart pounded hard and fast in her chest. There it was, clear as the morning sun. "Here's a cozy cupcake message for you. Revenge is sweet." Chapter 3. Before long, the police were on the scene at the Gazette. Luckily, the police station was also located in the town square, so it didn't take long for officers to get there. Soon enough, crowds had formed and began to gather outside the old Victorian converted office building in the town square. This was not looking good. The whole situation wasn't looking good at all. Dana stood to the side as the officers observed the area. They were speaking with the senior editor of the Berry Cove Gazette and the rest of the staff about what happened. "Dana? Oh, thank heavens! Are you all right?" Aunt Naya rushed in through the front doors of the building. "Okay, ma'am. I'm afraid you're going to have to step aside. This is a homicide investigation." One of the detectives spoke sternly to Aunt Naya. "But my niece is here." "Who is your niece, ma'am?" the tall, handsome detective asked. He looked tired and weary, as if he had just finished the end of his night shift, which had now been extended since this unexpected case. He had dark blonde hair, blue-green eyes from what Dana could tell, and what looked like an old surgical scar on the side of his face. But oh, was he handsome. "Dana." "Hi, Aunt Naya. I'm fine, really." "You don't look so fine, sweetie. What happened?" "I just got here and—" "We're going to be speaking with you, too." The officer took out his notepad and sighed heavily. "I'm Detective Evan Markson from Homicide." He flashed his badge before proceeding. "All right, let's begin. Can I get your name?" "Dana Sweet." "Address?" "I live at—" Dana paused for a moment. She had to get used to not having a zip code any longer. She was no longer a city girl from Brooklyn, New York. She was now a small-town resident of Berry Cove. 123A Berry Lane, she continued. "Did you say 123A Berry Lane?" he asked as he wrote down the address. Uh-oh. Dana guessed her grandmother's address was a famous and popular place in this small town. "Wait a minute, are you Ma Ray's granddaughter?" another detective asked, probably the guy's partner. "I'm Detective Troy Anders. Your grandmother was a good citizen here." He was also handsome, Dana noted. He was just as tall as the other detective, if not a bit taller. She guessed they were both over 6 feet tall, but Detective Troy had darker hair. Brunette, short-cropped with ocean blue eyes that sparkled and high-chiseled cheekbones. Still, his expression did not seem as friendly as Detective Evans. Yes, I am, as a matter of fact." "So it was your cupcake that Bradley Farmer Jackson was eating this morning," Detective Evan interjected. "From the cafe. You're the new owner, right?" Dana watched in horror as a team of forensic specialists observed the cupcake while taking snapshots for evidence before placing it into a plastic bag, probably for analysis. She swallowed hard. Dang those nerves. Dana hated to swallow hard when nervous. It made her look guilty or showed lack of confidence. She noticed the detective glancing at her neck when she swallowed. He probably thought she was guilty as sin, which of course she wasn't. Nowhere even close. "Well, I'm not sure." "Hey, wait a minute," Detective Troy said to forensics as they were passing by with the cupcake in a bag. He observed it and saw the logo on the purple wrapper. "That'll be all. Take it to the lab." He then gave Dana a cynical look. He went back to his notepad. "We have our cupcakes delivered to many businesses in the area. That's nothing unusual," Dana finally added. "You aren't saying she had anything to do with this, are you?" Aunt Naya asked, her hands on her hips ready to fight for Dana. "We're just asking questions right now, ma'am." Dana tried to regain her composure. A cup of resilience. That's one of the ingredients in her grandmother's recipe for a good day. Resilience. Boy, did she need it now, and more than a cupful. She could also do with a cup of coffee. Strong and black, too. "Where were you between the hours of 7 and 9 this morning?" Detective Troy asked her pointedly. His voice was smooth and silky, like warm honey, yet strong and deep. She was almost mesmerized by him, but she had to shift her focus off his deliciously ocean blue eyes. The man probably thought she was a murderer, for goodness sake. Why was she even thinking he was remotely good-looking? Besides, she was so sworn off men, for now. Between the hours of 7 and 9? Dana scrambled her brain, trying to think. Her mind was an empty bowl of nerves right now. "Yes, ma'am." He sighed heavily, clearly impatient with her long pauses. But she was still in shock. Her mind was numb. Goodness gracious, a man was just killed in Berry Cove. Talk about major drama. She would have never expected this from a cozy small town like the one her grandmother grew up in. The very same small town where she visited often and spent memorable times with her grandparents during her early days. This was only supposed to happen on the big screen or in big cities. Certainly not in small-town Berry Cove, famously known as the land of fresh berries and produce and friendly warm welcomes. "Well, I was actually at home at 7 o'clock. Detective Troy scribbled down notes on his pad. "Then," she continued, "I got ready and came into the cafe to check on things. The cafe opens at 7, Aunt Naya added. I know. Detective Troy's voice was void of emotion. Uh-oh. Did he think Dana had something to do with this murder? And that she was possibly trying to cover her tracks? But then, why in Sam's name would she return to the scene if she did? Right, because sometimes suspects do that. Duh. She was the writer of a mystery riddles blog. She should know that by now. Just then, a thought popped into Dana's mind. Should she mention that she bumped into Mike, the mail guy, earlier, and he seemed to be rushing away from the Gazette? Just what was he doing there anyway? She couldn't wait to tell Aunt Naya after she spoke with the cops, of course. But then again, Mike being in the area probably meant nothing. After all, it was a free country, right? He was probably just seeing an old friend or something like that. Just then, Detective Evan walked back over to them. He, too, had a notepad in his hand and had been interviewing other witnesses. Dana looked around and saw Mike, the mail guy, leaving. Did he just finish speaking with the cops? When did he get back to the Gazette? Dana's mind was spinning. Her thoughts raced back to her brief encounter with the town gossip, Gertie Sue, saying that folks don't like different in this small town. Were people trying to push her out by pinning this on her? She really had to give her mind a break from thinking. Dana was beginning to get a tension headache. Maybe she was being too dramatic here. There was no reason to be so harsh with her assessment of them. Wait a minute. Oh, yes, there was. There was a very good reason for her to be suspicious. It looked as if she might be framed for murder. Chapter 4. Detective Troy looked at Dana suspiciously. Are you all right, ma'am? Yes, I'm fine, she lied. She was feeling anything but fine right now, but she wasn't about to let Mr. Detective Guy know that. If you're finished, Troy, I'd like to ask the young lady a few more questions. Detective Evans seemed much more polite and ready to interrogate her again. Detective Troy looked a bit uneasy at first. Dana picked up that even though they were partners, they might not be bosom buddies. Okay, she was so not going to fall for the good cop, bad cop thing anytime soon. Detective Evan then spoke forcefully, getting to the point, asking Dana a few more questions. She couldn't get over his muscular physique and tall stature, and his handsome blue-green eyes. What a mixture. So mesmerizing. Were all the cops in this small town gorgeous as models? A witness said he saw you outside the newspaper office after that nasty story about your bakery hit. Okay, that really killed the mood. Excuse me? Dana asked defensively. The witness said that you told him you had some business to take care of at the Gazette. A witness said that? Talk about having your words taken out of context. Okay, so somebody was cooking up a heck of a story with all the ingredients of a frame-up. Yes, yes. Which is it, ma'am? Evan arched a brow. Yes, I said I had some business to take care of, but it's not what you think. I had to run an ad. I see, Troy said, scribbling something down on his pad. He sounded dubious. Detective Evans seemed way nicer to Dana, more understanding, but she reminded herself about the good cop, bad cop scenario. She had her guard up higher than a pile of whipped cream topping on a rich chocolate caramel sundae. Somebody was trying to frame Dana in this sweet old town, and she was going to find out whom. An hour later at the cafe, Dana couldn't focus on anything. She stood in the back sifting through the new order of cupcake wrappers and supplies. Imagine that. Her newest purple-designed cupcake wrapper with the saying scratched off and a new one added in its place was found at the scene of the crime at the Gazette. She still couldn't wrap her head around the fact that Brad was dead. Brad or Bradley or whatever his name was might have been a sneaky, cantankerous little thing. But he certainly didn't deserve to end up with his head slouched over on his desk, dead as the wooden desk he rested on. There is so much commotion out there, Katie said, rushing through the swinging back doors of the kitchen with an empty cupcakes tray. Everyone is talking about what happened at the Gazette to Brad this morning. You would not believe how news spread fast. Gotta love the small town. Well, that certainly serves him right. Inga chimed in as she whipped up a new batch of creamy cupcakes. The sweet scent of vanilla mixed with butter and eggs filled the air. The oven had about a dozen more cupcakes inside it that made Dana's mouth water for a taste. "Inga!" Dana said, shocked. "That is not fair." "What's not fair is what Brad said about the cozy Cupcakes Café in that article. That silly fool," Inga said. "But nobody deserves to die the way Brad did," Dana said. Dana's mind was still in a whirlwind spin over her brief interview with detectives Evan and Troy. Have mercy. She'd never had any reason to speak to law authorities until now, and she liked it that way too. She'd always tried to keep her nose clean all her life, and certainly never had any minor infractions of the law or accidents, to which she was eternally grateful for. She always drove according to the speed limit, and often parked only where she was supposed to park. Okay, well, there was that one time when she parked for more than 30 minutes at a mall parking spot which clearly stated 30 minutes maximum stay. You know, the parking spots near the front of the mall on a busy holiday rush season. But who would have known that the mall lines would have kept her there for more than an hour and a half? She would never, repeat, never, shop on a Black Friday again. No matter how great the sale was, from now on, her only Black Friday sales would entail online shopping in her pajamas, where she would be safe from being pushed, shoved to the ground, and punched by other eager sales shoppers looking for that hot, one-of-a-kind bargain. "Dana?" Aunt Naya's voice interrupted her brief daydream. Funny, while in New York, Dana used to daydream at her desk in the cubicle at the ad agency about the simple, small-town life back in Berry Cove. But right now, she couldn't help but feel as if someone here didn't want her to be there. And now she was daydreaming about being back in New York. Only she really did fall in love with Berry Cove, with all its simplicities and warm, cozy atmosphere, and beautiful scenic parks and historic buildings, all wrapped up in neat lots of cobbled roads and warm Victorian homes. "Yes, Aunt Naya?" Dana tried to sound as cool as possible. "Are you all right, dear?" "Sure, why wouldn't I be?" Aunt Naya rushed over to Dana and placed her manicured hand with her French manicured long nails on Dana's forehead. Aunt Naya had gold rings on each of her fingers, including her thumb. Dana wondered if she would be getting rid of those too, and replace them with custom jewelry, just as she'd gotten rid of her designer bags and replaced them with fakes, so that newly penny-watching Uncle Merv wouldn't know. More than ever, Dana had to make this cafe work so she could be there for her family too. Everyone seemed to be hitting hard times, and even though Aunt Naya was a bit of a fun drama queen, she was there for her when her folks died, and took care of her and paid most of her college expenses. Nans was always struggling financially, though always offered her emotional support and kind words of wisdom and a place to call a second home. But in the past, Aunt Naya had always been there for her financially, and she would never forget it. Her gold, shiny bangles on her wrists were dangling and clinking together as she felt Dana's forehead. Dana could smell the sweet scent of Aunt Naya's designer perfume fill the atmosphere in the kitchen that already had the aroma of freshly baked goodies. Auntie Naya always liked the finer things. "Aha! You certainly don't feel well, child. You're hot as a sin." "That's because I'm in the kitchen, Aunt Naya, and I have to unpack this inventory of cupcake wrappers so that we can keep our cakes going. We're already low on stock. And you're low on morale right now, too, aren't you, darling?" "Excuse me?" "I can tell, honey child." Aunt Naya smacked gum in her mouth and placed her hands on her hips. "That hot-looking detective got you all hot and bothered this morning, didn't he? I can tell. The nerve of that guy insinuating that you could be involved somehow." "Aunt Naya, it's not like that, really. I had nothing to do with it." "Oh, I know that, but I don't want any silly rumors going around town about my niece." "How could they even think that?" Katie chimed in. "Why would Dana go over there with our cupcakes and poison him? Wouldn't that have been obvious?" "Hey, who said anything about poison?" Dana asked cautiously. "I just assumed." Katie flushed. Immediately, Dana regretted speaking her thoughts out loud. After all, her cousin was only trying to help her out. Still, there were too many ears right now in the kitchen. Inga stopped swirling a few cupcakes with the tool for a moment and looked up. Her expression was blank. "These will be ready soon. You can take these out to the front," Inga then said to Katie. "Fine, I will." Katie perked up and lifted her chin. "Katie, Dana said to her quietly. Is there anything I should know? Dana was beginning to have the sneaky suspicion that nobody was telling her the whole truth about the goings-on in the small, close-knit township. No, of course not, Katie said. It's obvious that he was poisoned, and I don't blame whoever did it. That guy's mouth was as lethal as they come. He always had nothing good to say about anyone. I'm surprised it never happened sooner. Aunt Naya sighed heavily. It's all right, child, she said to Katie. Everyone knows Brad had a few nasty things to say about you two. He did? Dana's voice rose in surprise. Katie's warm expression froze. But why? Dana took a quick breath of utter astonishment. She was more vested in this now. She had to get to the bottom of what really happened to Brad. She was always the problem solver in her old job, and now her mystery blog. Solving riddles was something that she liked to do. Because I dated that creep once. There, I said it, okay? Katie had her arms folded tightly across her chest. You dated Brad? Dana's jaw fell open. Intense astonishment touched her face. Why didn't I know about this before? Well, it wasn't what it sounds like. He asked me out for a drink once and I went. I just didn't know what a creep he was at the time. He tried to put the moves on me before I was ready and I gave him a piece of my mind. And the next thing we knew, Aunt Naya added, Brad went and spread all kinds of naughty rumors about our little Katie. That simple fool. And you know, in this part of town, rumors fly like pancakes in the wind. Dana couldn't help but grin at her auntie's metaphor. She didn't think pancakes could fly in any wind. Well, maybe a strong wind, but anyway. Katie, Aunt Naya, I'm so sorry that you've been through all of that. Dana felt genuinely bad for them. Words could not express her shock at this new revelation. Her cousin with the town snob, may he rest in peace? Well, it looks like he made a living out of making enemies with everyone, Dana added. You can say that again, Inga added, stiff-lipped. Dana also wondered what Inga's story could be. Hey, I thought you girls would be hiding back here, Uncle Merv said, walking through to the back with his walking cane as he entered the kitchen. Uncle Merv! Dana was always happy to see her dear old uncle. You know we're busy at work in here, as usual. Sure. My dear sweet Petunia never steps into a kitchen. A store, yes. A kitchen, no. He lovingly teased his wife before giving her a peck on the cheek. The two of them always fought back and forth. Uncle Merv looked his age, while Aunt Naya looked 30 years younger, so people often assumed she was younger than he was when they were really the same age. But oh, he loved her very much. Uncle Merv's hair was salt and pepper, white with black at the sides, and he looked every bit the classy man he'd always been. What are you doing with that empty water bottle, Uncle? Dana asked. Oh, I'm filling her up, of course. Why buy water when you can just fill her up? Do you know how much a bottle of water costs these days? Aunt Naya playfully shook her head and rolled her eyes. Merv, you're going to give everyone here a breakdown if you keep on with those penny-pinching antics of yours. Easy for you to say, my dear, Uncle Merv replied. Dana grinned. She loved the chemistry between them and hoped it would last forever, given the serious nature of their finances. It was still good to see them in high spirits, and, as always, there for Dana. Oh, and Dana, Uncle Merv added as he hobbled closer to her while everyone else was busying around the kitchen. Yes, Uncle. There is something I need to talk to you about, but not in here. Too many ears. He whispered, leaning closer to her. Too many ears. Okay, Uncle, I'll be finishing up the inventory pretty soon. Then I'll take a break. No worries, dear. We'll see you at the house later, after work. You're still having us for dinner, right? Oh, of course. Dana had almost forgotten after all the commotion this morning. She wanted to throw a little family housewarming dinner to mark her official move back to Berry Cove at the Victorian. Just a little meal with her close family members. She couldn't wait to hear what Uncle Merv had to say about all of this. At his own corporation, where he worked in accounting, it was he who had suspected some faux reporting from his bosses and did his own investigation. It turned out that he was right about the corruption at BB&X accounting firm, who were swindling pennies from each of their corporate accounts, which added up to millions in embezzlement over the years. Uncle Merv was the penny king, always had been. Thanks to growing up after the Great Depression, he would say. To Uncle Merv, everything was about money. Money was always a motive. Money bewitched people, he would say. It was the greatest motivation for anything. That and the power of love. Dana wondered now if Uncle Merv wanted to speak with her because he thought money could be behind Brad's death. Did he really think that? Could it be? Either way, someone was trying to frame her and defame the good name of her grandmother's cafe since Dana took it over, and she was not about to let that happen. At least not without defending herself and her Nana's legacy. Soon after, Uncle Merv and Aunt Naya left the kitchen with their own order of strawberry cream cupcakes with fresh strawberries and berries on the side. It was amazing that he met someone who loved to spend like Aunt Naya. Still, they were great for each other, and Aunt Naya ran a successful business back in her day, before her injury, and before she took up yoga and all the other fun stuff she did today to keep herself fit, looking healthy and feeling good about herself. In fact, Aunt Naya had been trying to get Dana to go with her to the Berry Cove Health Club for some time now for one of her yoga classes. She really needed it more than ever now. Dana had a lot on her mind, like keeping the cafe afloat, the grand opening, and now a murder investigation. A crime involving a restaurant critic and one of the cafe's prized strawberry cream cupcakes served with a cup of cold murder. The day couldn't possibly get any worse. Could it? Chapter 5. After an exhaustingly long day at the cafe since the murder, and after writing her latest article for her online mystery blog, Dana was all too happy to be back at the cozy Victorian. She stood in the grand kitchen, swirling up a batch of her newest recipe that she wanted to try out at the cafe this week, in time for the opening. That's if the cops didn't shut the cafe down first. She was just waiting for the detectives to show up with a search warrant of some sort from the town judge. She carefully whipped butter and granulated sugar in the electric stand mixer until it was nice and fluffy. Then she mixed in a couple of eggs and whisked sugar together with a half cup of vanilla-flavored almond milk and some strawberry puree she had made earlier, along with a teaspoon of vanilla extract. Savoring the scent of the creamy mixture, she drew in a deep breath, and her mind ran on the scent of strange cologne that wafted to her nostrils at the time of Brad's death. Why was he wearing that strange cologne? And so strong? Wasn't the newspaper a scent-free environment? That's what the sign said at the entrance of the building. Stop that, Dana. Stop thinking awful things that's happened. But then, how could her mind not drift to the recent events of the day? For cricket's sake, there was a murder. A murder in the sweet small town of Berry Cove, which meant there had to be a murderer on the loose, right? Or at least one very vengeful person who would stop at nothing to get revenge, and in the process try to frame or pin part of the blame on her late Nana's cafe. One ingredient at a time, Dana, as dear old Nans would say. Or was it one worry at a time? Actually, her Nans would say that worry was the worst ingredient in a person's daily happiness diet. It totally spoiled the flavor of any day and served no purpose and was useless. Well, Dana would like to think so too, only she didn't know what she'd do if the cafe was shut down during the grand opening week. She'd already put a lot of her own savings into the business to try and save what was left of her late grandmother's legacy. Uncle Merv and Aunt Naya would be there soon. She also had homemade baked lasagna in the oven, and she could smell the tasty mozzarella and Parmesan cheese and oregano and garlic spiced sauce wafting in from the oven. She took a peek through the glass window of the oven where the light was on inside. Yep, looks about right. She noted the bubbling mozzarella cheese on top of the lasagna and golden brownish baked top. Grandma Ray had taught Dana about cooking and baking, and she found it to be the most relaxing activity after a long day, especially baking fresh pastries and cupcakes. Once Dana got the cupcakes in the oven and set the timer for 25 minutes, she pulled out the piping hot tray of lasagna with the melted cheese bubbling up nicely. It was already done. She'd learned to multitask from her job in New York. She could never have one activity going at a time, or one thought at a time for that matter. But that was something entirely different. At least busying herself, preparing a feast for her family, kept her mind and her thoughts away from the murder at the Gazette this morning. Dana still couldn't quite wrap her head around that bizarre event. Who in heaven's name would do that to Brad? And why? And why use one of Cozy Cupcakes Café's treat of the day? And then, of course, they nastily switched up the saying of the day to say something mean instead of kind. Talk about bizarre and odd. Her heart pounded in her chest just thinking about it. And then there was that strange scent. Was Brad planning on going somewhere? Why go heavy on the cologne? Okay, Dana girl, focus on one thought at a time and make it a nice thought. Worry doesn't solve a thing. Right now, she could use a cup of resilience to get her through the night. Dana then got her blender ready and decided to make her famous green smoothie in addition to the cupcake desserts. She totally loved to host and to prepare tasty dishes. Her New York apartment, the one she could afford, was like a small box with a tiny kitchen, so she didn't get to host as much as she liked there. Ramon and she had mostly takeout from nice restaurants on the town, or ate out like most city dwellers. Dana opened the top of the blender and measured out her ingredients on the stone countertop. First, she poured in a cup of distilled water. Then Dana added 3 bunches of baby spinach leaves, the equivalent to 4 packed cups full. She then grabbed some blueberries from the freezer. She loved to use frozen fruits, which were pretty much frozen from fresh, so they were just as good as fresh fruits and veggies, without the risk of wilting from being in the supermarket too long, or spoiling in the fridge if not used right away. Dana then peeled a banana and sliced it up into 4 pieces and tossed it into the blender. She added an apple, cutting it up into 4 without the seeds, and added that to the mixture. She added some plain low-fat vanilla yogurt. She hummed as she looked into the fridge for her ground flaxseed package. She added 2 tablespoons to the mixture. She then hit the crush ice button to break down all the frozen fruits first. Then she switched to mix and puree at full speed, watching as the ingredients mixed into a deliciously healthy, creamy mixture, perfect for dessert. Especially since Uncle Merv had to watch his blood pressure and add fiber to his diet. The smoothie was filled with antioxidants, just the way she liked to make it. In fact, her grandma taught her to always add healthy ingredients to all tasty treats. That was why her blueberries in the cupcakes did well at the cafe. Rich in all the good stuff. Fresh fruits, as Berry Cove was known for its berry farms, yet delicious and tasty at the same time. Good, that should do it. Meow! A soft purring escaped the lips of her cuddly little friend. It was Truffles. Hey, little thing. You can't be hungry again. I just gave you a treat. Dana smiled warmly and quickly washed her hands before scooping Truffles up in her arms. Truffles purred even louder. She then hissed. What on earth are you trying to tell me, sweetie? Just then, Dana felt a sudden draft coming from the back. Funny. She thought all the doors and windows were locked during the biting cold fall night, with the wind blowing hard enough to whisk the orange, brown, and golden maple leaves off the branches and onto the ground and knock your hat off your head. Ding dong! Dana was startled as the doorbell sounded. She was sure that Aunt Naya, who had been looking after the Victorian while Dana was in New York, had the key. Cautiously, Dana walked to the front door, then peeked out through the peephole of the oak wooden door. The sky was a purple-reddish hue, and the leaves were blowing hard, bending the branches outside. The shutters against the windows banged slightly, but there was no one there. At least not that she could see. "Who is it?" Dana called out to the wind. She was sure someone rang the doorbell. She didn't hear a sound, only the howling of the wind outside. She certainly didn't see any sign of Aunt Naya, Uncle Merv, or Katie. Curious, Dana opened the door to take a peek. No one was there. She drew in a deep breath and went back inside, closing the door. It was chilly outside on this autumn night, so it was good that the fire heated up the old Victorian as it crackled in the fireplace. Truffles hissed loudly. "What is it, Truffles?" she said softly, as if speaking to herself, peeking around. She could feel the soft fur of Truffles cuddling around her leg. Before she could say anything more, she opened the front door again and saw a note stuck to the wooden rocking chair on the veranda. The chair swung back and forth in the cool evening wind, as if someone had been sitting in it and rocking hard before taking off. Dana was stunned and felt the blood siphon from her face. Her mouth fell open. The note read, "Get out while you can." Chapter 6. Dana reread the note scribbled on one of her cupcake wrappings in disbelief. A fluttery feeling centered in her chest. Her insides began to quiver. She felt weak in her limbs, and she was sure her temperature climbed up a notch. The nerve of that coward, whoever left the note. Meow? You can say that again, Truffles. Who on earth would send this? It was as if Dana were speaking to nature as the wind howled back in response. Determined to get down to the bottom of this, she quickly peeked around the courtyard and saw no one. They couldn't have gotten away so fast. Could they still be hiding around the house? Should she turn this note over to the police? But then again, Detectives Troy and Evan weren't exactly nice to her. Why should she trust them? Or should she? She couldn't wait for her auntie and uncle to arrive. They'd help her sort this out. Dana decided to go around to the side of the house to fix one of the shutters. She walked over to the far right. Truffles followed her, keeping her company. As she got closer to the side, Dana stumbled and fell down into the gutter below the window. Before long, she felt strong hands grab hold of her. Oh no. She let out a piercing scream. Was she going to die? "Hurry up, woman," Merv said to Petunia with a grin. "You would take a century to get ready if you could. We're late for Dana's dinner party." "It's hardly a dinner party, dear." Petunia was busy placing her earrings on her ears. "She's just having a little housewarming with the immediate family to mark her new home at the Victorian. And we're early." "No, we're not," Merv said to Petunia impatiently. His fingers slid behind his suspenders, holding up his pants. "We're on time when we're half an hour early." "Oh, Merv, you always keep this half an hour early thing." "And why shouldn't I? You know what they say about the early bird getting the worm, right?" Petunia playfully rolled her eyes and grinned. She loved her dear husband, but they were so opposite in their ways. "Dana is probably like me, dear," Petunia added with a smile as she continued to fix her earrings, glancing in the vanity mirror on her dresser. "She would like her guests to be on time, not early, not when she has all those dishes to prepare. And you know, I offered to help in the kitchen, but she insisted she wanted to try out some of her grandmother's recipe on her own and just get comfortable in the kitchen." Petunia sighed. "Ma Ray was a really sweet lady. She was like a mother to me, too. I miss her." "I miss her too, darling." "And you know something, Merv? I worry about Dana." "You too, huh?" "Of course. I mean, she's such a sweet, dear girl, and she's trying so hard to save the cafe. But it's as if there's some odd vibes going on around town about the cafe." "Well, you know the Baxters would love to see the cafe shut down, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. You mark my words." "I know. I just wish we had the funds to help her pay off some of those debts. Now we have this murder investigation going on. You know something?" "What, dear?" "Let's head over there now. I'm worried about Dana. My instincts tell me that she really shouldn't be alone. I mean, what if whoever is trying to frame her—" "Don't even go there, darling. Nothing will happen to our little pumpkin niece." "I hope not. Let's go now." Petunia grabbed her Vuitton knockoff handbag, feeling a tinge of guilt over not letting Merv on to what she had done by selling her original to help with the costs on the house. They were going through a rough patch, and Dana had offered to help them out. Bless her heart. But it seemed as if Dana would be the one who needed more help. Still, family stuck together no matter what. Dana was her brother's darling child, and she'd do anything to protect her. Dana cried out and wiggled to get free from whomever was grabbing her. She caught the sweet scent of spicy aftershave or cologne from whomever held her captive. Then, "It's all right, ma'am. I've got you." A gentle, deep voice sounded. She spun her head around and saw that it was Detective Troy. Stunned beyond belief, she was relieved as his strong, muscular arms pulled her out of the ditch. "What are you doing here?" Dana asked incredulously. "I could ask you the same thing, ma'am." "I live here." "In the ditch, ma'am?" Okay, he got her there. Charming and handsome and witty to boot. But she was sworn off men for now, right? Though she was very glad that he'd saved her from scooting further down that hole. He pretty much saved her life. No, not in the ditch. Dana paused, breathless. Anyway, thank you, she said hurriedly, brushing herself off. What had she been thinking? She should have been more careful, but she didn't realize the depth of the ditch or how soft the ground was around that part of the house, which was yet another thing she would have to take care of when she earned enough money from the cafe to do repairs around the old Victorian. I just happened to be around the area patrolling, he said. Oh, really now? She arched a brow. Well, no, actually. I came here to see you. He seemed to hesitate for a moment, and in the early night sky that had turned a dusk and purple hue, his striking features looked positively gorgeous. But Dana had to remind herself that he was a cop who earlier had been interrogating her about a murder. Well, Dana liked a guy who was honest at least. That gave Troy one over her two-timing ex-fiancé, Ramon. You did. Why? Dana asked cautiously. There went that fluttering in her chest again, to her chagrin. This time it wasn't for nerves. As soon as the detective helped her back to the front of the house, she remembered she had something in the oven. Oh no, the oven's still on. Smells good. I see you take after your grandmother. Thank you, she said, hurrying back to the kitchen. Troy followed her inside. You still didn't tell me why you were here to see me, she added, not forgetting the conversation. She knew that someday multitasking would come in handy. She quickly whipped out her tray of cupcakes from the oven and placed it on the granite stone countertop beside the already cooling pan of lasagna she had taken out earlier. She was thankful that she was able to upgrade the stone on the counter a few weeks ago. Her grandmother's old wooden counter had taken a beating over the decades, beyond repair. Though Nan's really wasn't one for modernizing much and liked to preserve the integrity of the old place, Dana ensured that it fit in with the vintage decor. Well, actually, your Nan and I were good friends. Oh, you're the officer she mentioned who used to check up on her once in a while. Yes, she was good people. I know. By the way, would you like to stay for dinner? My aunt and uncle will be stopping by soon. Oh, no, I'm good, thanks. Just ate. I see, Dana said, tossing the salad before getting the table ready. She quickly eyed the clock, then turned her attention back to Detective Troy. So you were saying? Dana wondered if she should tell the detective about the note she just found. But right now, she didn't know who to trust in this cozy small town that made her feel like a stranger amongst them. Truth was, she really did feel that way right now, especially after what Gertie Sue told her about some folks not liking people who were different. Was Detective Troy that way too? Who knew? Wait a minute. Could he have been the one to leave the note? No, he wouldn't be so obvious. It would have been way too obvious. But Dana couldn't help but think about how strange it all seemed. And where was Auntie Naya and Uncle Merv? Dana knew that Katie was working late at the cafe tonight and would be home later. Keep an open mind, Dana. Not everybody's gone wacky. Well, I just wanted to ask you a few more questions. Oh, so it was strictly police business. Well, of course it was. Why else would he be there, right? You mentioned that you had gone to the Gazette for an appointment with the advertising department, right? His tone was serious. I believe that's what you told my partner, Detective Evan. Yes, that's right. Dana was suspicious now. Truffles hissed loudly. Well, I'm just letting you know that Sam, the advertising manager, did not corroborate your story. What? What do you mean he didn't corroborate my story? But I was there. I was there to place an ad. And did you? Did I what? Place the ad. Dana froze. What on earth was going on there? No, she did not end up placing the ad, did she? Well, no, I didn't because it's sort of hard to carry on with business as usual when there's a dead body in front of you. And what were you doing in Brad's office? He's a reporter, not an ad manager. Well, there's a perfectly good reason for that, officer. Detective. I'm listening. He remained stern, yet she could not tear her eyes away from his handsome features. Okay, stop it, Dana. He's a cop, and his interest in you is purely legal, nothing more. I was going to place an ad, but then there was no one in reception, and then the cleaning lady screamed out and said that Brad was dead, so I followed her into the cubicle office. I can't believe Sam wouldn't tell the truth about me going there to see him. You know, you ought to subpoena Sam's calendar to prove he's lying, Aunt Naya said as she walked in through the open door, her chin up defensively as she now stood in the doorway of the kitchen. Her imitation designer handbag in the crux of her arm, she was smacking gum and had her eyes narrowed on Detective Troy. Thank God for family support. If my Dana says that she had an appointment with him, Aunt Petunia continued, then my Dana had an appointment with Mr. Advertising What's-His-Name, period. So you're Dana's aunt. Detective Troy rolled his eyes as he reconfirmed her identity, since he'd met her earlier at the Gazette. That's right, and something fishy is going on in this town, and I don't like it. You guys are after the wrong gal or person of interest. We don't have any formal suspects yet, ma'am. Detective Troy's voice remained firm. But we'll be in touch later. Detective Troy then nodded courteously to Uncle Merv and Aunt Naya, and then he was out of there in no time. Chapter 7. The nerve of that man, Uncle Merv said later at the dinner table. Aunt Naya, Dana, and Uncle Merv sat in the grand dining room, by the fireplace and the vintage dinner table having their lasagna. They'd left dinner for Katie in the oven for later when she finished working from the cafe. Dana hoped that Katie wouldn't have too much to do and wanted to stay back and help her and the staff. But Katie assured Dana that she had no trouble running things as she had done before Dana showed up on the scene to take over managing the business side of things, which was what she excelled at. Katie had told Dana that if it hadn't been for Dana getting the records straight and funneling her own savings into paying the suppliers and the overdue bills, the cafe would have gone under already. But Dana couldn't wait to get her hands sticky with the real joy of running the business. The baking, shaking, and swirling of the icing of the tasty cupcakes that people enjoy from the cafe. But Katie had been such a darling sweetheart, seeing how Dana had been pulling all-nighters just as she had done back in college, getting the disastrous bookkeeping records straight that had been neglected since Nan's passed away by her elderly accountant, who had started to have trouble with his memory, locating receipts, and his failing eyesight. Poor thing. I know, he does have some nerve, Dana murmured after taking a bite of her lasagna. The sauce tasted rich, but she wished she hadn't added as much oregano. Still, Auntie Naya and Uncle Merv were kind enough not to say anything about it. Or perhaps they never noticed. She loved cooking and baking, but she was no Grandma Ray or Martha Stewart or any of that, come to think of it. Or as Grandma Ray would say, you need to feel love to cook with love. Well, tonight she was feeling a little bit on the sour side. No doubt she was distracted with the thoughts of the murder investigation. She had a burning desire to get to the bottom of the mystery surrounding Brad's untimely passing and her mix-up in all of this. Who do you think could have done it? Dana dropped the fork on the plate. It must have been planned. You know, I was thinking the same thing, Aunt Naya said. And as I said earlier, Dana, Uncle Merv added, we need to talk. I know, Uncle. Now you know me, I'm a puzzle solver, Uncle Merv said. Yes, that's right. He was able to pin down who was swindling money at the firm he worked at for over 30 years, Aunt Naya confirmed. I know, that's amazing what you did, Uncle. So sorry that it cost you your retirement, though. You really didn't deserve that. Oh, it's nothing, Pumpkin. But I love reading murder mysteries, and I came up with some theories. Oh boy, Aunt Naya said, rolling her eyes. She dropped her fork on the plate and wiped her mouth with the napkin. Merv, please don't go giving this poor child any of your fairy tales or fiction. This is reality, a really serious case. I know, but sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. It helps to see some precedents. Precedents? Dana was lost now. Yes. You see, there was this reporter who was once found dead in his office at some newspaper in Texas. It ended up being a staff member, someone close to him. That's true. You know something, Uncle Merv, you do have a point. It had to be someone who knew his routine like clockwork. I always say that people are creatures of habit. Someone knew that he had his morning coffee with cupcakes delivered fresh first thing in the morning, and that there would be a period where he would step away from his desk. And they also know that the staff meet up first thing before the crack of dawn to get down to the editorials and the first printing, and that he gets back to his desk with the goods there waiting for him. So there must have been plenty of opportunity for someone to tamper with his food. Uncle Merv took a sip of his coffee. He seemed to come alive when talking about solving mysteries. Dana wondered how he ever ended up an accountant instead of a mystery writer. He adjusted the rim of his glasses on his nose. His white and black hair reminded her of salt and pepper. He had a dark mustache and well-defined dark eyebrows. She'd always been fond of stories and words of wisdom that Uncle Merv used to tell her. "I love the way you analyze things, Uncle." "You're not too bad yourself, Pumpkin. I do hope you publish more frequently with that online mystery riddles website. I really enjoy doing them." "Uncle!" Dana was stunned. "Were you the one that sent me an email to keep it going? Or several emails?" "Now why would I do a thing like that, Pumpkin?" His grin was subtle but sly. Dana couldn't help but roll her eyes and grin. "I think you tried to send me a few emails from the same IP address pretending to be different people." "Oh, really now?" He grinned. All right. I confess. I tried to tell you to keep it going, sweets, but you wouldn't listen, so I figure if you think it's coming from strangers, you'd believe them." "Okay, you've got a point. I know you and Auntie love me, so of course you would support everything I do. I wasn't sure if I was good enough to keep it going more often." "You see now, sometimes you've got to let things slide," Uncle Merv said. "I hope you do forgive me." "Of course I do. Why wouldn't I?" "Thanks, Pumpkin. We all have to be forgiving, just as Ma Ray would preach." Dana grinned fondly, remembering her grandma's talks about forgiveness and how toxic it was to hold a grudge. "I mean, I forgave Naya here for selling them Louis Vuitton bags and then replacing them with fakes, thinking I wouldn't notice." He fixed the glasses back on his nose. "Merv!" Aunt Naya looked positively mortified. "Oh, dear." Uncle Merv feigned innocence. "Did I say that out loud?" Dana quickly rushed to change the subject before a heated argument happened. A grin surfaced on her face. "So, Uncle, how did you know about Brad's routine?" "I used to do a special project for the Gazette. They were having trouble with their finances and bookkeeping after their other accountant up and left them. And that's another story altogether." "What do you mean?" "I mean, Brad had it out with the old accountant. He had dated his daughter, and it didn't end well." "Boy, this Brad character really got around," Dana said under her breath, then immediately regretted saying something less than favorable about the deceased, even if he had been underhanded to her. He still didn't deserve his unhappy ending. Everyone had redeeming characteristics, right? That's what Grandma Ray had taught her. Look for the good in others. "Sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned that. May he rest in peace," Dana added. "Oh, that's all right, child. He was a player. Everyone knew that." Aunt Naya had a stiff lip. She must have been really peeved after what he had done to Katie. Who could blame her? "Do you think the ex-accountant for the Gazette could have had anything to do with it? A former disgruntled employee?" Dana asked. "Nah, he had a motive all right, but not the opportunity. The security around the Gazette is pretty tight. Only staff and security can get around there." "Well, gee, I don't know about that, Uncle. I mean, when I arrived, I was alone in the reception area." "But you had to be buzzed in by the security team in the basement. They oversee who enters and leaves." "That's very interesting," Dana said. "What is?" "The fact that the security staff must have seen someone leave or enter." "That wouldn't help much if it was an inside job, and I believe it was." I see your point. But another question was, who could have known Dana was going to be there too? "Could you look into this for me, Uncle?" "I would be more than happy to, Pumpkin. I have a lot of time on my hands these days, and you know something? Research has always been my thing. I'll keep my eyes and ears to the ground and see what's being said. Can't have anyone pointing the wrong finger at my little niece here." "Thanks, Uncle. I really do appreciate it." In the meantime, Dana was determined to do her own investigation. There was something that was really off about this Detective Troy character. Something really odd, and she felt she really had to get down to the bottom of this. Later, after dinner, Dana and Aunt Naya washed and put away the dishes. "You really don't have to do this, Auntie. You are a guest tonight." "Oh, nonsense! All the reason to help out. I am not going to let you do all these dishes after you did all the cooking. And it was very delicious, Dana." "Are you sure now?" Dana teased, drying off a dish with a towel before placing it in the tall cupboard above the sink. Well, of course I'm sure. You've come a long way with your culinary skills, my dear. I'm so proud of you, and so would your grandmother be if she were here with us now. I mean, you were always the career type. Captain of the school's debate team, volleyball champ, and literature club's president who could work your way around an office, or any corporate setting. Organizing mergers, creative copywriting, and all that stuff. No one expected you to be a kitchen princess, too. I mean, your grandmother and most cooks we know don't have half your executive strengths. We all can't be perfect at everything, you know, but at least you've made the effort, and that's what counts. Thanks, Auntie. Dana flushed. Uncle Merv yawned. I think my bed is calling me now. Dana, as always, you are a lovely host. Well, I better be heading off to bed soon myself. Dana yawned. I've got an early start tomorrow. Of course you do, darling. Of course you do. And don't you worry your pretty little head about those awful detectives. They're new recruits at the station, you know. Well, at least one of them is. They just think they can go around intimidating folks around here, throwing their weight around and all. Aunt Petunia gathered her coat and headed for the front door. Dana walked her and Uncle Merv out. Katie's late tonight, Dana commented, glancing at her watch. Well, she has the keys. She can let herself in. I know. Later, after a long, warm bath in the clawfoot tub in the upstairs bedroom, Dana thought she heard a sound coming from downstairs. She towel-dried her hair quickly and walked toward the hallway. The board made a squeaking sound as she walked. Who's there? Katie, is that you? It's only me, Katie shouted from below. Whew, I thought it was another drive-by, Dana said, walking down the steps. Another drive-by? Yes, Dana explained about the note earlier. What? Well, did you say anything to the detective? Nope, I just didn't feel it at the time. Well, Dana, that's not good. It could be a crazy person trying to run you out of town. You need to let the cops know. You have a point. I didn't think about that. I just thought, well, what? I don't know. I just thought that maybe Troy had something to do with the note. But why? He's a cop. Precisely. And he doesn't like me, or he at least suspects me of something. And most importantly, he happened to be here just moments later. How could anyone have left that note stuck to the rocking chair outside and just ran on foot without me seeing them or hearing them? If they had driven, I would have heard the engine go in the car, right? True, but it could have been someone who biked it, too. That's true, Dana thought for a moment. Katie, is there something I should know about Berry Cove? I mean, everyone here is so sweet and everything, but I don't know if I fit in. I mean, Gertie Sue told me to be careful. Katie rolled her eyes and shook her head. Let me tell you something, cuz. Don't always believe everything Miss Busymouth has to say. She sometimes exaggerates things around here. And you know, Brad wasn't exactly liked around here. So I hear. Mom probably told you more details about what happened between us, or what didn't happen between us. Sort of. What was that about? I mean, he just doesn't seem your type. He isn't. We were working on a project together, and a group of us were supposed to go to lunch. Well, no one else showed up, and it was just me and him. I was hesitant at first. I mean, I've heard of his reputation, and I'm not exactly a fast lane kind of girl, but I figured it was only a business lunch. And then he tried to put the moves on me, and I put him in his place. Good for you, cuz. You would think so, she laughed it off. Apparently, that's not the version he told his friends the next day. Everyone thought I was easy. I mean, how childish was that of him? Gosh, I see your point. He really was a character. Tell me about it. It seems like he is quite suited to Bianca Baxter. Bianca Baxter? So, what's the story there? Well, she's an heiress, of course, to the Long family dynasty that built the first bake shop, the Baxter's Bakery, in Berry Grove in the late 1890s. That's quite a history. They're legends, aren't they? They were legends, Katie corrected Dana. Were legends? What happened? Well, they had fallen on hard times over the years, and things do change. Their recipes are not quite what it used to be, and neither is their customer service. Not since old Mr. Baxter passed away years ago, and he was an okay guy. But he handed the store down that was given to him from his great-grandfather reluctantly to his daughter, who is Bianca's mother. Reluctantly? Why reluctantly? Well, haven't you heard? No? Heard what? Just then they were interrupted by the sound of a broken glass. It seemed as if Truffles had knocked something over after climbing on the table. She already had her snack time. After getting Truffles settled beside them and cleaning up the broken glass, they reconvened in the living room, sitting on the plush, cozy sofa by the fireplace. Dana curled up on the couch with her MacBook Air, tapping in some notes. "What are you doing?" Katie asked. "I'm doing what I always do, cuz. Making some notes." "Notes?" "Yes, notes. If somebody is trying to frame me, then I'd better get my notes together. I might need 'em in court. Now, you were saying?" Katie grinned and rolled her eyes. "Okay, cuz. You were always the organized one. Well, Old Man Baxter wanted to leave the bakery to his son, but he had died in an auto accident some years back, so he reluctantly gave it to his daughter, hoping that she wouldn't mess it up since she knows as much about a kitchen as she does Latin, which is zilch." "I see," Dana said, tapping away on her keyboard. "And that's not all, girl. She's a shopaholic and has used up whatever inheritance she had gotten from the bakery, spending it lavishly on gifts and expensive vacations. Never mind that, she had pretty much let the bakery gone down to the dogs." "How so?" "Not giving a rat's behind what anyone does at the store. And the new chef changed up the recipes and she gave the go-ahead without reviewing them first. See? No concern whatsoever." "What's wrong with giving the chef the go-ahead with new recipes?" Katie cocked a brow. "You don't know their new chef, or should I say, baker, do you?" "No, I don't." "Well, let's just say he's a bit taste-impaired." "Oh, dear." "Yes, dear. Unfortunately. Looks as if when the 5 senses were given out, that one was skipped with him." Dana's jaw fell open. "Sorry to see the old bakery go downhill," Katie continued. "But blaming other business owners who work hard in keeping their own customers happy is not going to help them a bit." "True. Do you think one of them is trying to frame me?" "Well, I will say that Mrs. Baxter is not exactly an easy-to-get-along-with type of mother. She never liked Brad, and apparently had a fight with her daughter over him. She told Bianca to dump his sorry butt." "And?" "Well, they got engaged anyway, so there's that." "Well, that would have given Mrs. Baxter the perfect motive then." Possibly, but that would be hard to prove." Dana placed her laptop on the couch beside her. She sighed deeply. "I should be heading to bed. It looks like tomorrow might end up being a long day." Later, Dana tossed and turned in her bed that night and woke up to see the display on the clock. It read 2:00 in the morning. She just couldn't sleep. She had a lot on her mind. Boy, was moving to Berry Cove proving to be more than what she bargained for. But tomorrow was another day, and it had to be better, right? Chapter 8. It was 10 o'clock the next morning, and Dana had to take a quick break from the cafe. She had a massive headache and decided to head over to the Berry Cove Pharmacy in the town square. The door chimes sounded, and Phil, the pharmacist, greeted her with a warm and cheerful smile. He seemed quite happy, unlike most of the townspeople this morning. And who could blame them after that horrible murder that happened yesterday? She still couldn't get over Brad's untimely death. "And how are you today, Miss Sweet?" Phil asked her. "Could be better, Phil. Right now I've got a massive headache, as you can imagine." She walked over to the counter. "Sorry to hear that." The look of concern slid across his face. "I realize how you must feel, being that you had a beef with that Brad guy over at the Gazette, and then he turns up dead with one of your cakes." My. Word sure spreads quicker and smoother than whipped peanut butter frosting over a chocolate cupcake, Dana thought to herself. To her surprise, Phil spoke so nonchalantly while he busied himself behind the counter filling prescriptions. Dana sighed heavily. "I feel bad, Phil. I really do. No one deserves to be murdered." Phil said nothing for a moment. Then he paused, as if he had to think about what he was going to say and how he would say it. Phil leaned over the counter toward Dana. "I'll tell you something, Miss Sweet. Brad was no friend to anyone in this town. It could have been anybody who did it." "Really now?" "Yep, that's right. The guy collected enemies like pebbles on a beach. I'm surprised he even had any friends. He was a conniving fella." "Well, that's not good. But it's still sad about what happened to him. Everyone has redeeming qualities. He must have had some." Phil thought for a moment, then shook his head. I think he was the exception, Miss Sweet. Now, what can I get you today? Dana was almost too stunned to speak for a moment. My, it really seemed as if no one in town really liked Brad at all. Seemed like Brad had something on everyone. And for Phil, the pharmacist, to also be glad he was out of the way, it really made Dana think. Got anything that would make this headache go away? Dana asked Phil. Try a clear conscience, a customer murmured, then walked away. Dana spun around. The woman was a stocky, short lady who had a blue dress on and a large rimmed hat with glasses. She couldn't quite see her face, and she walked off quickly. Her heart pounded hard and fierce in her chest. She felt her pulse reach the top of her throat, closing off her airway. It was an older lady who she had seen before somewhere, but she just couldn't place where. Okay, Dana, just take a deep breath now. No one could possibly blame you for this. Oh, great. First, her wonderful Nana's bakery was struggling, and now, after Dana took ownership, it might very well collapse after a bout of bad publicity, with this murder somehow tied in to her famous strawberry cream cupcake. No, it couldn't go down like that. How could fate suddenly pull the rug from under her? Dana didn't want to believe it. Someone tried to deliberately frame her, and she was going to find out who. She had to get to the bottom of this, even if it killed her. Well, maybe not that. Even if it gave her a killer headache. The door chime sounded again as Phil perused the shelf for a painkiller to help rid Dana of her worries. It was Mike, the mail guy. Hey there, Mike said to Dana cheerfully. Hey, she murmured, trying to throttle the dizzying currents of sadness overwhelming her. She wanted to ask him why he told the officer that she'd been trying to take care of business at the Gazette, but then again, she'd only appear to be guilty if she did. She really didn't want anyone to know how much it bothered her, even though it did. As her Nana would say, it's not enough to be doing the right thing. You have to appear to be doing the right thing, too. Appearance was everything in this town. Hey, you all right? Oh, wait a minute. Don't worry about that guy. No one in their right mind would think you could have anything to do with the murder. He had it coming, Mike said as he placed his carrier bag on the counter. Then why were you so quick to tell the detective that I was on my way to take care of business at the Gazette, Mike? Okay, she couldn't help herself. She just had to blurt it all out, didn't she? She was never the one to keep things bottled if her feelings were strong about something. That would just give her high blood pressure. Let your feelings be known, as Nana would say. Huh? Was all Mike said. What are you talking about? Never mind, she replied, feeling rather childish. After all, he was probably just answering police questions. Just routine procedures, she supposed. Who could blame him? Even though it could have been taken out of context, she did say those words, didn't she? Then Grandma Ray's words came back to her. She'd always say, remember to keep your words soft and tender, because tomorrow you might have to eat 'em. Dana grinned at the memory. But boy, could her words turn on her now if a grand jury ever heard it out of context. Hey, you're back so soon? Phil looked aghast and turned his attention to Mike and shook his head, giving him a tisk. Phil turned his attention back to Dana and handed her some tablets. A generic pill container of ibuprofen for her headache, to which she paid via her credit card. She had few funds in the bank right now. She was already in overdraft. She was counting on doing well with the grand opening this week. She needed the money badly, especially after she'd used up most of her savings to save Nana's cafe. Dana looked at the mailbag on the counter. Mike probably had some more bills to give Phil. Who could blame Phil for not wanting to see the mailman every day? Do you think it could be Phil the pharmacist? Katie said to Dana later as they sat in the kitchen of the Victorian. Katie had just baked some fresh chocolate chip and oats cookies in the oven. Dana made a pan of her special recipe spaghetti and bolognese. It was a nice way to end the evening after a busy day at the cafe. Everything seemed normal at the Cozy Cupcakes, except, of course, a few chatters here and there from customers about who they think could have done it. Phil the pharmacist? Why would you think that? Truffles curled around Dana's leg in the kitchen, and it warmed her heart. Just moments before, Truffles had already been given her evening meal and snack and pampered. Earlier, she was laying by the fireplace in her kitty basket, but she must have woken up by the sound of them in the kitchen. Hey, sweetie, did you have a nice nap? Truffles purred gently. Dana smiled warmly. Katie then reached down to stroke Truffles' fur, and Truffles purred even more with delight. You know, I overheard a few of the customers talking about Phil's niece who dated Brad once. Then he dumped her in such a humiliating way online, on some social networking site. Could you imagine? I had heard about them dating, but I didn't realize it was like that. I guess everything's coming out in the open now. You know how it is with small-town talk. Well, isn't that something? What's something? The fact that this Brad character made enemies with just about anyone and everyone, like it was some sort of hobby. It's crazy to think about, really, but... Dana paused momentarily, her thoughts spinning about what Katie had just said. No, of course not. And I don't think it's Phil. And why not? Because where would the opportunity be? Sure, he had a motive, but what about opportunity? That's true. You have a point, Dana. Katie scooped up a mouthful of spaghetti after twirling it with her fork and shoved it in her mouth. Very tasty sauce, she commented with her mouth full. Why, thank you, cuz. I'm trying out some of Grandma Ray's recipes. Back in New York with the crazy hours I worked at the office, cooking meant picking up the phone and ordering, instead of picking up a frying pan. Katie laughed. Dana scooped up a mouthful and placed it into her mouth. The taste of the sauce melted on her tongue. If she were being honest with herself, she really outdid herself this time. After she'd finished munching down on her food, Dana said, "One of the bakers at the Baxter Bakery was at our cafe early that day." She was? Yes. I was wondering what she was doing there, but I just figured she just wanted to taste one of our treats. No harm in an employee of a competitor stopping by for some breakfast, just like everyone else is there. Do you think it could have been her? I don't know, cuz. Or maybe Bianca's mother put the girl up to it so she could spy on us. Or maybe it was Bianca who set her up to spy on us. But why would Bianca or her mother set her up to do this? I don't know, but I just heard Gertie Sue say something like Brad had something over Bianca and she couldn't get out of the wedding so easy. Really now? Dana's eyes widened. She couldn't believe her ears. It seemed like Brad had his share of those who wanted him out of the way. There was, unfortunately for him, no shortage of enemies there. Really? Katie affirmed and nodded slowly. Well then, that is a new development. Truffles left the dining room and kitchen and scurried away. I wonder what's gotten into Truffs there, Katie said. I don't know. Dana got up from the table, scraping the heavy wooden Victorian-made antique chair on the tile of the kitchen. Truffles! Truffles looked at the back door and hissed loudly. Truffles, sweetie, what's wrong? Dana drew in a deep breath. Her heart pounded in her chest as she watched through the small window at the back as something moved in the bushes. Should we call the police? It could be a raccoon or something. Dana grabbed the long wooden broom from the corner and proceeded to open the back door. Dana! Shh! Truffles ran out before Dana could stop her. Dana's heart thrashed in her chest. Oh no, Truffles, come back! She feared for her kitty's life and ran out after her. Dana tripped on something in the dark and fell over. The broom went flying, and she could see that the rake had lifted up and whacked whoever it was in the bushes right in the head. Ow! The man's voice said, and he ran. Dana heard Katie's steps coming after her. The rest was a blur. The police were there shortly after, looking outside for any clues. So you said you saw a man in the bushes, Detective Evan clarified. Yes. Well, no, not quite. He sighed deeply and put his notepad away. Dana, I really think it's best that you leave the police work up to us. You should never have tried to approach a possible criminal by yourself. What would have happened if he had confronted you with a weapon? I had this. Dana picked up her grandmother's antique wooden broom. Detective Evan grinned and shook his head. I hardly think you could stop a hardened criminal with that. Dana growled. Detective Evan looked around the garden, which was now lit up with the back porch lights. He kept looking at the bushes and pushing his hands through it. What was he looking for? Dana wondered. She also tried to observe him for any signs of head trauma. Don't be silly, Dana. Why would he be sneaking around in your garden late at night? She sighed deeply. After they finished their investigation, she was warned to stay out of trouble and leave everything to the police. By the way, we're going to be needing you to stick around a while. You're not planning on going out of town, are you? No, why? Good. After he left, Dana spoke to Katie in the study. Until this thing's been cleared up, we need to postpone the grand opening. But why? For one thing, we should at least wait until after the memorial service. I forgot to mention that Aunt Naya came by with the notice that was in the papers. Everyone in the town is still buzzed about the murder. Isn't that going to hurt sales? Dana shrugged. I really don't want anything to mar the feeling of the grand opening. We should really give it a bit of time. I just hope that everything goes well. You and me both, Katie said. The economy is tight right now, and this is the only job I have. I really need it to pay off my student loans. Mom and Pops are not doing well right now, too. I know, Dana said quietly. I hear you, cuz. I really need this work, too. I used up all my savings trying to keep things afloat. With those words, Katie headed off to bed. Dana then scooped up Truffles. Truffles, my dear friend, what would I do without you? The kitty purred as Dana stroked her ginger mane. Truffles had been trying to warn her earlier. She was glad to have her furry four-legged friend. Before dozing off to sleep, Dana entered some more notes about her recent mishap into her shiny silver aluminum friend, her MacBook Air, which she simply referred to as Mac, and then dozed off to sleep. But what she couldn't help was that nagging feeling inside her of what else was hiding around the corner for her. Chapter 9. The following week, most of the townspeople met at the Captains and Captains Memorial House for Brad's memorial service. The funeral home was filled with oak design interior and fresh flowers that adorned the hallways. It was, as expected, very quiet and peaceful interior design. But Dana could tell, as she walked in with Katie, that there was nothing peaceful about the way most people felt. She couldn't help but overhear some of the whispers of the guests. I am so glad he's gone. The guy was a total menace, one woman whispered to her friend. Dana was aghast. She wondered why they had even bothered to come then, since he was, as they said, a total menace. She tried to think of something positive to say, but that was nothing compared to his viewing. She still couldn't get over the fact that his fiancé insisted on the new drive-through viewing. The drive-through viewing was a brand new service that was offered by Captains and Captains for busy mourners who'd rather drive through with a window of the coffin at the side of the building to view. It was just in time for his college mates from back where he was originally from to pull up to a drive-through at the Captains, who tried hard to be the most unique funeral home this side of town. Apparently, when the front wheels of the vehicle pulled up to the side, the window blinds where his coffin would lay would open up so that those who want to say their farewell could do so. Dana didn't want to comment, but she thought she would be mortified if anyone had done that to her. Still, Brad was an unusual guy in life, she supposed. He liked to do things differently, didn't he? Dana couldn't bear any more. She took her glass of orange juice and walked over to see the flowers when she noticed Bianca and her mother talking outside the reception area with another woman. Well, what's done is done. It's all for the best. I know, Mrs. Baxter said, stern. At least it's all over. Now the secret will be buried with him. Mother! Bianca protested. Oh, never mind, Bianca, Mrs. Baxter attempted to pacify her. It's for the best and you know it. I'm just glad it's all over now. Yes, but Mother, it's his memorial, for goodness sake. Bianca then stormed away from the conversation, and before she knew it, Dana was hit by her as she bumped into her. You? Bianca shouted. What are you doing here? Haven't you done enough with your poisonous cupcakes? Now that's not fair. Katie came to Dana's defense before she could say anything else. Bianca, I am truly sorry about what happened to Brad. Dana was genuinely heartbroken over the murder. I'll bet you are. He told the truth about your tacky tactics and trashy cakes, and you're here now to gloat? Go away! Is there a problem here, ma'am? The funeral director came rushing to Bianca's side, bumping into a mourner. Rushing like a customer service manager to the aid of a high-paying customer. Mrs. Baxter later came out to see what all the commotion was about. I want these people out of here now! How dare they show up? We came to pay our respects, Bianca, but we'll leave now. Dana kept her voice as caring and calm as she could. She didn't blame Bianca, who, after all, lost her fiancé. though she wasn't sure now after what she had just overheard if it was as traumatic for her as it appeared. Still, Dana really did want to keep the peace in there. The last thing she would want to be is a crasher at a memorial of all events. She nodded politely and placed her glass of orange juice on the counter by the door before heading away with Katie. So much for wanting to support the bereaved. There was something very odd about that whole situation. For instance, where on earth were Brad's parents? "Hey, is everything all right?" Detective Evan approached them in the parking lot of the memorial. "I'd like to have a word with you, Miss Sweet, if you don't mind." "Yes, everything is, good, thank you," Dana responded. "You sure now?" Evan arched a brow. His attention seemed focused on Dana. Dana sighed. She didn't want to get all emotional right now, but she couldn't help but feel a little deflated after being thrown out of a memorial service. "It's just been a crazy morning, Detective," Katie offered. "Dana, I'll be right over here if you need me." Katie then walked over to the car and left Dana alone with the detective. "I understand." Evan stroked the chin of his chiseled jaw. His handsome face showed a flicker of apprehension. "Is something wrong, Detective?" Dana asked boldly. "Well, I know I shouldn't be telling you this, but it'll be public information soon enough." "Tell me what?" "The lab saw traces of digoxin sprinkled on the cupcake." "Traces of digoxin?" Dana's jaw fell open. "Yes, ma'am. It was powdered down, obviously, and sprinkled on the cake. It's not too hard to find out who has a prescription for the pill. Soon enough. But, I'll appreciate you keeping that to yourself for now." "Of course." Dana didn't know what to think, but she felt relieved that Evan trusted her enough to tell her this bit of information. "You're not thinking," Dana said, then paused. "That you could have done it?" He finished her sentence for her. "We have a lead, but I'm not saying anything more on the subject for now. Troy and I will keep you posted." "Of course." Dana swallowed hard. The reality hit her full force. So this confirmed it then. Brad really was poisoned, and all sticky fingers were pointing to a frame-up. Chapter 10. "What are you doing?" Katie asked her cousin. Dana was curled up on the sofa in the grand living room by the fireplace later that evening. Her MacBook in her lap, she was keying in some words to try to figure out where to go next. It was really weird because she had her online mystery riddles website, and this seemed like a page off her own website. Well, just like in the mysteries I create for my blog, I'm trying to see if I can fit the pieces of the puzzle together so that it at least makes a bit of sense. "Oh? How so?" "Well, for one thing, I noticed that Mike had to have an early refill of his prescriptions. So, what's wrong with that?" Now, it didn't quite hit me at first, but then I realized that Detective Evan mentioned that Brad was poisoned by digoxin. "Oh my goodness! That's that heart pill, isn't it?" "Precisely. Now, I spoke to Phil the pharmacist later that day when I went in for some headache pills. And I questioned him about his conversation with Mike. And what did he say? Well, he was good enough to trust where I was going with this, and as I suspected, something funny going on and how someone was trying to frame me. Luckily, Phil was a good friend of my grandmother, so he was all too happy to help me out. He told me that Mike was acting a bit strange lately. He purchased a pill crusher recently for his medication, and digoxin is a pretty tiny pill. It should be easy to swallow, right? Right. So he must have used it to crush the pills into powder to form a sprinkle on the cupcake. No one would even notice it on top of the icing. They'd mistake it for icing sugar." "That's true," Katie agreed, wide-eyed. Truffles also purred in agreement, it would seem. Dana smiled warmly and stroked Truffles' ginger, fluffy hair. Oh, how she loved her furry little friend. If all else turned on her, Dana could be sure that Truffles would be loyal to her in the end, just as she had done with her own grandmother. In fact, it was Truffles who had clawed at the door of the neighbor to let them know that something was wrong with Grandma Ray that fateful day. That was how they had found her. Dana swallowed hard. But it was back to the present now. She had to at least make sure that her Nana's memory would be preserved the way it should be. Her Nana's beloved cafe and her motivational words she always shared with her customers must live on and not be tarnished by this strange and bizarre murder involving one of their own prized cupcakes. Then there was that odd scene at the funeral home. "I know, tell me about it," Imagine being thrown out of a memorial service which seemed comical at first since everyone seemed relieved he was gone. That's just it, Dana agreed. Even Bianca and her mother. Come again? Dana explained to Katie what she'd overheard earlier. What secret could they possibly mean? Do you think they might have had something to do with it? Could be, but I'm not going to just idly sit by while my fate is decided by a cop who seems bent on pinning this on me. I really don't trust Detective Troy, especially after he appeared after that note was found on my porch. My future is at stake here, and so is Nana's legacy, not to mention the grand opening, which has to be postponed yet again. Another postponement and we might not be able to pay our suppliers in time. Katie sunk in her seat by the fireplace. That would so not be good. I know. Tell me about it. So, Sherlock, Katie perked up a bit. Did you find anything out on the internet? Not yet. I'm just keying in some keywords. Well, there's his real name, Bradley Joe Farmer. I think that's what Detective Evan called him. Right. Let's check that out then. Dana tapped away on her keypad. And I'm also going to look into this advertising manager, Sam. I mean, he blatantly lied about my appointment with him. That's true. How bizarre was that? I know. What on earth was that about? It was as if someone's trying to cover something up for someone. Yes, Dana really wanted to know. Was there a dark secret in this little old town that everyone wanted to be sure it remained covered up? Chapter 11. Dana slugged her backpack in the back seat of her car and then moved over to the front. She had everything planned for her short day trip to Connecticut. She had her ears pressed to her cell phone, talking to Uncle Merv. So, what is this about the ad manager, Uncle? Well, I did some checking up on him, and it turns out that his girlfriend, Tria, was dating Brad at one time. Dana rolled her eyes and shook her head. Was this Brad guy dating everyone in the town? And, well, Uncle Merv continued, he'd really broken her heart. Now, Sam really thought that his beloved Tria had something to do with killing Brad. I see, Dana said thoughtfully. So he was covering up for her just in case by trying to pin this murder on me? Oh, Pumpkin. Sam apologized this morning. He's going to be speaking with you later. He panicked when he spoke to the cops that day. He really does like you, but it's as your auntie said before. You're a new face in town. An easy scapegoat. No one liked Brad in this town, but you were his latest victim, so he thought, why not pin it on you? Brad not only screwed a lot of folks over in this town, but he made sure, being an investigative journalist turned reviewer, that he dug up stuff on people that he could later use against them. Or he'd make up stuff about people that seemed real enough just to hurt their reputation. Wow, Brad really sounds like quite the charmer. They should name the town after him in his honor. Uncle Merv chuckled. That's the spirit, girl. Keep up that sense of humor no matter what. Dana smiled warmly. Uncle Merv and Auntie Naya had always had her back and been in her corner, and for that she was appreciative. But now she had more work to do. So that took Sam, the ad manager at the Gazette, off her list. For now, anyway. She was going to update her MacBook later. Mac was like her other friend. She could always tell him her secrets and pour her heart out to him, and he would record everything for her. How pitiful was that? A sleek, smooth metal laptop and a furry four-legged creature were her closest friends, not counting her family, of course. But as Dana recalled, Grandma Ray said it's good to have at least one good, trusted friend, and she was thankful every day, counting her blessings, that she had more than 3. Grandma Ray had been her everything, but now she had Aunt Petunia, Uncle Merv, Katie, Truffles, and Mac. 5 good friends. Not bad. And she had a feeling she would be needing all of them to help her crack the case wide open, to get the cops off her back, and get the cafe back on its feet. This had better work, Katie said to her while seeing her off. I hope so, Katie. I really do. Just then, she noticed that her tires were flat. How weird is that? Dana stooped down to take a look. She knew she had pumped a whole lot of air into them when she first came back to Berry Cove, and she really hadn't driven her car much since then. Everything was a nice walk in town. She had little use for her car. She enjoyed the beautiful walking trails and the close proximity to the town square. What is it? Katie called out. The tires, Dana said casually. What about 'em? Oh, nothing, except they've all been slashed. Katie's jaw fell open. Now, let me get this straight, Detective Troy said to Dana at the police station. He leaned back in his chair in his glass office. Dana noticed that he was rubbing the back of his head. Could he have possibly been in her garden that night? The other night? Did Troy have a concussion or a bump at the back of his head? You believe that someone tried to cut your tires with a knife, Detective Troy continued, bumping Dana out of her daydream. If Dana read correctly, one would think he viewed her like some busybody troublemaker who also seemed to stir up extra unnecessary work for him and his poor, already overworked colleagues. They didn't try to cut my tires, Detective, Dana sighed. They succeeded. Okay, we'll get one of the boys to go and look into it for you. Thank you, Dana paused. They won't be coming now, right? Well, our workload is quite busy right now. Right. Well, thank you anyway, she said. Now, don't just thank me yet. Excuse me? Now, it's my understanding that you've been trying to investigate this murder case at the Gazette. His voice was cool and stern, and his lovely blue eyes penetrated her like a laser. Dana swallowed self-consciously. She almost never got self-conscious around a cute guy. Not like this before, anyway. Well, not exactly. Just what exactly? Detective Troy asked impatiently. Well, I don't mean to sound paranoid or anything, but I believe someone is out to frame me for the murder of Brad at the Gazette. You're right. You do sound paranoid, Miss Sweet. Well, so much for friendly assistance around there. They could use a few good tips on customer service, in her humble opinion. Thanks for your support, Detective. Dana couldn't help but show her disappointment. Detective Evan came out of his office next door. Is everything okay here? Dana noticed Detective Troy shifted uncomfortably in his seat, as if he didn't want Evan there. How odd. Everything good here? I've got it covered. Well, I hope so. Evan nodded to Dana. You okay, Miss Sweet? Yes, could be better, though. I was just telling Detective Troy here that someone had slashed my tires. Oh, we need to get one of our guys on it to do a report then. We're swamped right now, Evan. Or haven't you noticed? Troy arched his brow. Dana thought the interaction between the two cops was odd. She always assumed cops who were partners worked together as a team and got along together. Yes, I have noticed, but we can never be too busy to help a lady in distress. As a matter of fact, I'm on my break now. I'll go and check it out for you, Miss Sweet. Dana's face lit up. You will? Sure. I take it you'll need a ride back then. He offered his arm. Dana couldn't resist and was very grateful that at least somebody was on her side. You'll have to forgive my partner, ma'am, Evan said as he drove Dana back to the Victorian in his cruiser. He's a little overworked, like the rest of us. But you seem so different. I'm sure you're just as overworked as he is. Well, Troy's a nice guy, too. He's just got a lot on his mind, that's all. Well, I appreciate it all the same. Later, Dana watched as Evan observed the tires. He took some notes and had the team take pictures. Right. We'll get this looked into and see if this is a pattern. A pattern? Dana asked. Yes. It's quite unusual for a small town like this where everyone knows each other, but just in case, we'll keep this one on file in case the assailant strikes again. You need to contact your insurance company and let them know you filed a report with the police. Right, of course, Dana said unconvincingly. She really felt that it was more of an isolated, targeted attack, but the last thing she wanted to sound was paranoid yet again, so she'd keep her suspicions to herself for now. Hey, I'm going into the tavern at the town square for a bite to eat, he asked. Would you like to join me? Dana was stunned beyond words, but at the same time flattered. Well, I would like to, but I don't think it's a good idea right now. Why not? I'm a little busy right now. Too busy to eat? He cocked a brow. She smiled. Her stomach rumbled like thunder just now. It was so loud she was sure that everyone from a mile radius could hear it. What's the big deal about grabbing a bite to eat? 2 people sharing a meal. Nothing to it, right? He couldn't possibly get any wrong ideas. Besides, she was starving. She had been planning to grab something on her little road trip, which was now canceled. Which reminded her she would have to just see if she could make a few calls instead and rely on whatever research she could find online. You know what? Sure. I'll grab a quick bite, Dana said after a little thought. Thank you for the offer. Nothing to it. Later at the tavern, the dim lights created such a relaxing mood, but Dana kept telling herself she was not on a date, just sitting down with a cop for a bite to eat. She was glad that Gertie Sue wasn't anywhere nearby, or else talk would travel around town like gossip on the grapevine. So, what made you decide to become a cop? Dana asked as she sipped her strawberry daiquiri drink with the large straw. I've always enjoyed helping people, I guess. That's very noble of you. It's good that you found a job at the local police department. Evan placed his drink down. Well, I'm very thankful for sure. I work part-time, though. Only part-time? Yes. I also do security gigs from time to time, like helping companies. Sounds cool. Couldn't the department offer you a full-time position? Nothing like that in a small town like Berry Cove. Even the mayor moonlights in his business. I see. I thought that would be a conflict of interest, though. This really is different from New York. He tilted his head back and laughed heartily. Yes, I would say so for sure. She smiled. A more serious expression slid across his handsome face soon after. On a more serious note, Dana, I just want you to know that I believe in you. You do? Yes, I do. He looked around surreptitiously. I know I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I went through the surveillance tapes at the Gazette. Didn't see much, but we know for sure that you were nowhere near there at the time of Brad's murder. Well, thank God for that. But why does your partner look at me with such suspicion? Well, you know how things work. Anyone can pay someone to do a job for them. Oh, really now, she said. You don't really believe that, do you? I'm not sure what a hitman would charge for his services, but one peek at my bank account would tell you that wouldn't even be in my budget. She took another sip of her drink. He smiled. I guess not. The music started to play, and Detective Evan thought it would be a good idea not to hide in a corner, lest anyone thinks they are hiding away from the crowd. But they sat off to the side. And what brings you back here? He probed gently. Other than the obvious. Well, you know about my grandmother. Yes, I do. I think it's noble that you want to help keep the cafe open. She was a really sweet lady. Thank you. It's the least I could do, really. I mean, my parents were killed in a crash, and she'd raised me ever since. My Aunt Petunia is from my dad's side, and Grandma Ray is from my mom's side, but they took turns and helped me through it all. Evan's eyes cast over with sadness. I'm truly sorry about your loss. I know what that's like. You do? I do. I lost my mother when I was born. Oh, Evan. I'm so sorry to hear that. Thank you. Then my dad raised me, just like your Nana. He did everything for me, then, he died when I was in my teens. So I know how hard it can be to lose a parent or two. I can't imagine both at the same time, though. I know, it's not easy. Dana felt a strong connection to him. She'd misjudged him, she supposed. I hope you stick around after you get the cafe up and running again. It's good to have a friend who shares the same sort of life experiences. She gushed. Same here. If only it were that easy to make a friend with his pit bull of a detective partner, Troy. If only. Chapter 12. You went on a date with a detective? Katie's jaw fell open later that evening. Not exactly a date, just a friendly bite to eat. Dana couldn't wait to tell Katie about her findings. That's great! So you're in the clear then? Not quite. What do you mean, not quite? You weren't seen around there at the time of the murder. True, but Detective Troy thinks I could possibly have paid someone to do it and then later went by to make sure it was done. What? How could they even think that? Stranger things have happened, I suppose? Dana paused and thought. Well, Uncle Merv and Auntie Naya will be here soon to help us with raking the leaves, so I'd better get going. I think it's so sweet of them, though I can do it on my own. Oh, that's Mom and Dad for you. They really don't mind. It's another form of exercise for them. They enjoy it. Besides, they've been helping your grandma with yard duty while you were in New York. Why change now? It's true, I suppose. You see, I really like this. Dana hugged her mug of coffee to her as she sat around the kitchen table with Katie. You really like what? This. The simple life. Everyone helping each other out. Everyone makes time. It's like time slows down nicely out here so that you can savor the taste of the moment, enjoy the closeness with nature, and the beautiful surroundings and friendly neighbors. Wow, you almost sound like an advertisement for the country life. You should consult the town hall to rewrite some of their tourist brochures. Dana laughed. Sorry, I guess it's the former copywriter in me. Can't help it. No worries, it's beautiful. You seem to sum it up all right. Life is a lot different here than in the big city for sure. Been there once, wouldn't want to go back to living there though. Oh right, I remember. You moved to uni in the big city. That's right. It was fun and everything while it lasted, but I really couldn't wait to come back to small-town hospitality, where everyone knew you and looked out for you. Dana thought about that for a moment. It was good that the town was close-knit. Yes, they looked out for each other, but was that what happened when Brad was killed? Was somebody looking out for the girls in the town? A vigilante, perhaps? Dana shook the thought out of her head and finished sipping her drink. Just then, she heard the key turn in the lock after a quick knock. Even though her aunt and uncle had the key, they always warned her before just opening the door, which was sweet of them. Not that she'd be up to anything private in there, or roaming around in her birthday suit or anything. Thanks so much for coming by to help me with the leaves, Uncle and Auntie. Hey, it's fine. We do it every year, and it's brilliant exercise, too. Aunt Naya had her large straw hat on with dangling earrings and her gloves and sunglasses. She looked positively adorable like a tourist. Her silk scarf was also wrapped around her neck. Uncle Merv said he'd help with the bag. He often had his walking cane, but at times would leave it behind on a good day and try to get a bit of exercise. Dana and Katie did most of the hard work, though, since they were younger and gathered most of the leaves. Dana couldn't wait to tell her aunt and uncle about her meeting with Detective Evan. So it must have been an inside job then, Uncle Merv calculated. I thought so. I'm wondering if Sam from advertising had anything to do with it then. I mean, he pretty much denied having an appointment with me in the beginning, though he admitted it to us later, but not to the police. It wouldn't look nice on him if he changed his story with them, would it? It could be possible, but I don't think so. Dana thought about what she and Katie spoke about earlier. It's a small town where everyone looks out for each other. I'm willing to bet that it could have been a few people at the Gazette that Brad was blackmailing, and they each covered for each other, right? You know, my dear, that is a good observation. They do look out for each other. But if that were the case, it would be hard to crack then. If they banded together and provided an alibi for each other, that is. Dana tried hard not to feel discouraged, but the butterflies of despair flitted about inside her. Still, she was out in the clear, right? That was, unless someone was trying harder to push the outsider out of the small-town circle while pinning the blame on her. Back at the cozy Cupcakes Café later in the night, customers started talking about Bianca and the picture of Mike. Was Mike seeing Bianca? He could have had something to do with it. He had purchased a pill crusher, according to Phil the pharmacist. Mike must have wanted Bianca for himself, but she was tied down to Brad. So he'd get Brad out of the way and help Bianca's business by getting her competitor out of the way too. 2 birds with 1 stone. Dana was aghast at the possibility, but it all seemed plausible, didn't it? Evan had called her not too long ago and also told her about the police update before it hit the local news. Cause of death was not poisoning, but concussion. Someone had wanted to poison Brad, but he ultimately bumped his head. Was it after he ate the poison, or before? He had some food in his mouth according to reports. The question that overwhelmed her mind right now was, did someone place it there in their effort to frame Dana? Chapter 13. Please don't tell me the grand reopening is being postponed yet again. A customer approached Dana at the cafe after the morning rush the following day. Sorry, Mrs. Dawson, just for at least another week. Is that okay? She smiled warmly to the woman. Her grandmother had a lot of elderly clients who enjoyed having a weekly bingo session at the side on the west veranda. A lot of seniors gathered for some fun and relaxation. It was more than just a cafe. Dana wanted to continue her grandmother's vision and allow it to be a place for everyone to have fun and convene for warm gatherings as they enjoyed the eloquent artwork on the cream-colored walls, the calming waterfalls at the side, the aroma of freshly baked cupcakes and coffee, tea, or their favorite healthy smoothie of the day. "Oh, well, what can we do?" Mrs. Dawson smiled sweetly and walked away with her cane. The woman had told Katie earlier, apparently, that she was looking forward to the grand raffle prizes they were offering at the grand reopening. Mrs. Dawson, like many of the guests, loved to play games and win prizes. It was almost like a sport or a hobby for them. Many of the long-term town's residents were retired and looking for a little low-risk adventure every day. Though the cozy Cupcakes Café appealed to everyone, both young and old, retired and working, family and singles, it was still Grandma's place. Dana hesitated at first to change the name, but after poor sales in the weeks following Grandma Ray's death, she figured they knew Grandma was passed on and it wouldn't be the same. So she still kept the old logo, but added a new name. And Dana really wanted more than anything to keep it that way, just like her grandma's Victorian-era house. A bit of the past mixed in with a bit of the present and the future. Dana hid her disappointment as she worked in the back on some new cupcake recipes while she spoke on the phone with Katie. Earlier at home, Truffles had been resting on an old newspaper. She just remembered the article in that newspaper about a celebrity getting an identity change, and it hit her. Someone wasn't who they said they were. Chapter 14. Later, Dana saw Troy and Evan in the national park talking and decided to move closer behind a tree. She kept quiet to see if she could find anything out by listening. "Stay away from her, Evan." Troy's voice was filled with contempt, it would seem. "She's getting too close to the case." "Too close? You know what I mean?" "No, I don't, Troy. Just what are you getting at?" Evan challenged Troy, but Troy held his ground. What on earth was going on between them? Just then, a spider crept up near her, and she froze. "Okay, it's only a little bitty spider. Nothing to it." She tried to coach herself, to no avail. Why were humans, so big and powerful, afraid of a little creepy-crawly thing with, 8 legs? Dana couldn't help herself, and she finally let out a scream, and both men turned around. "What are you doing here?" "I was, looking for Truffles, my kitty." "You took your cat for a walk?" Troy asked incredulously. "Sometimes." Liar. Who takes their cat for a long trail walk? Truffles is not a dog. Before Dana could allow them to probe any further, she nonchalantly jogged off, calling out Truffles' name and pretending not to be bothered by it all, her heart pounding hard in her chest. Oh, goodness, they really must think something was wrong with her now. She left both men behind with a puzzled expression plastered on their face. Well, actually, Evan seemed a bit amused by her interruption, not annoyed like his partner Troy. But at least she got out of that one, for now. Later in town, Dana headed off to the grocery store to pick up some food for the Victorian. The fridge was looking about as bare as her bank account right now. She spotted Troy making a phone call from a phone booth dressed as a technician guy. What was he doing? Didn't most people have cell phones these days? Or perhaps he wanted to make sure that his phone was not bugged. As she walked, she kept glancing at him, not paying attention to where she was going when, splat, she tripped and landed head and hands first into a cement tray. "Hey lady, watch where you're going," a workman called out. "Now you tell me?" She got up and tried to get the substance off her. "Great, I'll need to shower all day now." Detective Troy looked up from where he was to see the commotion, but quickly left the scene. How odd. Was that even him? Was he undercover for another job? Maybe he didn't want his cover blown. Before long, an ambulance was on the scene, and luckily Dana was all right. Well, physically at least. Her emotions were spiraling out of control right now. At the hospital in the emergency room, she waited to see the doc and had the TV turned to the entertainment channel to get her mind off stuff. "Oh, darling, thank God you're all right." Aunt Petunia made her way in. How did you know, Auntie? Oh, I'm your next of kin now, remember? Besides, I bumped into Gertie Sue and she told me what happened. That's strange. I didn't even see her around. What were you doing, darling, walking into cement like that? Didn't you see the signs? Dana sighed and grinned. I didn't do it intentionally, Auntie. I was just watching Detective Troy acting suspicious undercover. Just what, dear? Dana told her aunt what she'd seen and what she'd suspected. Oh, darling, anything is possible, but why wouldn't he send someone to do his dirty work for him? I don't know, Auntie. I wish I knew. Dana stopped and looked at the screen of the TV. She saw a brief news report from the entertainment world of a supermodel, Chiatara, and her new beau, advertising executive Ramon Rancioli, getting married in Italy. She tried not to get emotional. Her heart exploded in her chest. She was glad she'd found out about his two-timing earlier, but it was still heartbreaking. Aunt Petunia looked up at the screen. She then reached over to shut it off. You don't need that garbage, hun. Good for them. You don't need them. Thanks, Auntie. I'm actually over him, and you know something? The good thing about being here in Berry Cove is that I haven't spent a single second thinking about his betrayal. No, she hadn't. That was the good thing, of course. But then again, she was too busy being occupied with trying to clear her name and the cafe's reputation from a crazy, puzzling murder rap. That would do it to get her mind off her broken heart. Chapter 15. Dana had a talk with Katie again at the Victorian about the case the next day. So, what on earth could they have been talking about? Katie asked. I have no clue, and it seems as if Troy was really annoyed that I had interrupted them. Evan was apologetic, though. I mean, you should have seen his cute face, but I haven't heard back from him. He canceled our next meeting until later. He said he got stuck with some last-minute stuff. I'll bet. $10 says Troy gave him some last-minute stuff to do to make sure he kept his distance from you. Dana shrugged. It's no big deal. Maybe they really do suspect me and there would be a conflict of interest. Which brings me to another situation. I really hope they don't try to pin this one on me. It's nice to have someone on the inside who's on your side. I hear you. Do you think you should let Evan at least know about your suspicions about his partner? I don't know, Katie. I think that would be like skating on thin ice. As much as I adore Evan, I just don't want to push it. I mean, he might just go ahead and confront Troy. What would be so bad about that? Well, everything, for starters. Then Troy would really want to get at me. Then what would I do? What if he attacks Evan too? Evan doesn't have as much seniority as Troy. He's only part-time too. Troy is full-time. I don't want to jeopardize his job, especially with small suspicions. Dana realized, according to her calculations, that it was not going to be an easy investigation on her part. Yet she frowned, thinking of how much further away she was at getting the real killer. As if reading her mind, Katie asked, So, what did you and Mac come up with then? Well, for starters, Mike does have a strong motive. So does Bianca and her mother, Katie said. True. And I also wonder what kind of dark secret Brad had over them. That is a crazy thought. I wonder about that too. Just then, Truffles strutted by the dining room, swaying her bushy tail from side to side. She climbed up on the sofa next to Dana and started purring. At least she wasn't hissing. Dana knew that Truffles had some good intuition for danger and would always hiss her way into Dana's lap if there was something she should know. So this was a good sign after all. As Dana placed her laptop on her lap, she looked over some items with Truffles cuddled up with her in the quilt blanket on the sofa. They all sat by the fire enjoying the crackling sound coming from the stone fireplace. So, let me see here. Dana scrolled her mouse down the screen. We have Mike, Bianca, Mrs. Baxter, Phil the pharmacist, Troy. Troy? Okay, so no, it can't be a cop, but he is acting kind of suspicious. Do you think he had a girlfriend or sister that was dumped by Brad too? Who knows, Katie? Who knows? Trouble is, I feel as if I am further away from the truth than before. Dana blew out a puff of air. Her bangs lifted off her face. I just wish I could clear this up. So it's not hanging over the cozy Cupcakes Café like a dark cloud on an otherwise summer day. It's awful. Did you know that a few teenagers came by the cafe today? Oh, that lot? Right, and they seemed so enthusiastic at first, taking selfies and snapshots of themselves outside, and Inga said she overheard them calling it the Killer Cupcakes Café. Oh no, that's terrible, Katie pouted. Exactly. We really need to. Just then, Truffles whipped out of Dana's hug and pounced on the keyboard. Her tiny little paws danced tapping away, clearing everything off. Oh no, Truffles, no! Dana reached over to hug her little furry friend and gently moved her away from the computer, but it was too late. Most of the stuff she had typed had been deleted, probably just before the autosave kicked in. Oh, great. I guess I'm going to have to re-enter everything in the computer again. Truffles seemed to purr with satisfaction. Dana shook her head and grinned. Okay, little one. I guess you're trying to tell me that I need to spend more time away from the... Dana stopped mid-sentence and stared at the laptop screen, which was almost blank, save for a few letters. What is it? Katie asked anxiously. I think I know who killed Brad. Chapter 16. Dana got into her car and turned on the ignition. Hey, I'm coming with you, Katie said as she slid into the passenger side. Before pulling out of the driveway, she keyed in a few numbers on her phone, then sent out a text for backup support. She had to do this right, and as Evan said, she should never put her life in danger again. Her mind then flashed back to the day after the murder, and she briefly closed her eyes and swallowed hard, drawing in a deep breath. Hey, you're back so soon? Phil looked aghast and turned his attention to Mike and shook his head, giving him a tisk. Dana looked at the mailbag on the counter. Mike probably had some more bills to give Phil. Who could blame him for not wanting to see the mailman every day? But that wasn't the case, was it? Later, Dana ended up at the tavern and bar in the town square, while Katie waited in the car in the parking lot. Hey, Mike, Dana said to the mail guy when she spotted him sitting in the bar drinking a cold beer. Hey, yourself, Dana, what's going on? Oh, nothing. I was just wondering if we could have a few words. I have to ask you something. Mike looked around. The bar was practically empty and there was no one else there. Sure. They went over to the side while Katie waited in the car with the ignition turned off and the lights off, so that Mike would not be aware that anyone else was around outside. What's this about? The day that Brad was murdered. I just have a few questions. You see, I have this murder mystery blog, and I was hoping you can help me solve this murder that's similar to this. Oh, you're a sly one, aren't you? You think I don't know the real reason you're here? Dana felt uncomfortable, but she was determined to keep confident. The truth is, Mike, I was confused about a tiny detail, Dana said. About what? You always delivered mail at 9 a.m. I went to the pharmacy on my morning break. I was at the pharmacy at 10 a.m., so I thought, what gives? What do you mean by that? You know what I mean. It was then that I realized that you couldn't have possibly been there for mail delivery, again. Phil has a photographic memory and remembers each customer's refill time. That's why he shook his head and tisked you. He thought you were there way too soon. You should have had a week's supply left, but you didn't. And Brad was killed with the equivalent of 7 digoxin tablets crushed in the pill crusher that you purchased a few days prior. You were there to refill your digoxin because you finished your 30-day supply earlier than 30 days, which meant you used a few to crush and sprinkle on the cupcake at the Berry Cove Gazette head office. But something went wrong, and you struck him too. So you figured it all out, did ya? Mike's expression darkened, giving Dana chills that slithered down her spine. But Dana was determined to hold her ground. She was not going to be fearful of him, though she probably should be. Well, yes and no? Yes and no, he said, inching closer to her. Dana instinctively took a few paces back, slowly and smoothly. Never corner yourself, she was taught in self-defense. Always be near a door so that you could never be cornered in a room. Thank heavens she always took that advice. Of course, she was also claustrophobic, so having a quick exit point out of a closed-in space was always something she made sure of. You see, you went through a lot of effort to appear as if you disliked Bianca, which wasn't true, now was it? What's that supposed to mean? That's supposed to mean that when Gertie Sue went over to Bianca's home, she noticed a picture in a frame of you with Bianca when you two were much younger. So what? We went to the same school. Precisely, but not only that, I was lucky enough to catch up with an old mutual acquaintance of yours who said you'd always had an unhealthy crush and obsession with Bianca from the time you two met in school, and you've never let that up. So? Dana's tone softened slightly. She really wanted to reach out to Mike, as much as she didn't like what he did. There was that compassionate part of her again. Mike, I know it must have really broken your heart. She was your first love, wasn't she? His eyes widened. Was it fury blazing in his eyes or something else? Dana couldn't tell right now. He stopped walking toward her and paused. His expression froze and his eyes glazed over, as if dazed by memory or thought, as if he were in a trance. You're right, Mike agreed to Dana's surprise. I'm right? Dana echoed quietly. Yes, Mike said, drawing in a deep sigh. She was my first real girlfriend. I was so in love with her that I would do anything for her. Even kill for her, right? Mike looked at Dana as if struck by something. Well, it's true, isn't it, Mike? She probed gently. I hated Brad. He could never be to Bianca what I could be to her. Mike looked off into space. You really loved her, didn't you? But she was from a wealthy background, and it hurt you when her grandfather insisted she stop seeing you. Then, of course, she later met Brad, and you weren't too fond of him either. And of course you fantasized about being with Bianca and not having to ever work another hard day in your life because she could take care of you financially too, right? Mike stared off into space. I noticed that you were always complaining about your job and about your financial woes and all that debt you owed. That couldn't have been easy. If only life could be easy. You get the girl of your dreams, and because she's also wealthy, you wouldn't have to worry about finances again either. Mike sighed heavily. Dana continued. There would be two things in your way. You heard Bianca cry over her bakery sales declining because of my business, and you knew that Brad wrote that horrible review about me, and that would be the perfect opportunity to have your wishes come true. You would get rid of Brad and pin the blame on me so that Brad would be out of the way, and so would Bianca's competition. The very thing that threatened her livelihood. Isn't that right, Mike? Yeah, so what? So freaking what? Mike appeared to have snapped out of his trance. He proceeded to inch closer to Dana again. It hurt when you told Bianca what happened and she didn't want you anyway. You felt as if everything you did was in vain. That must have really hurt you, Mike. I know what it feels like to be hurt like that, though I would never do what you've done. I wanted so badly to get rid of that creep Brad, but I didn't do it. Before he could take a step further, Bianca came out behind the door. Tears filled her eyes. I can't believe you wanted to kill Brad. Detective Evan and Detective Troy also came out. Mike looked around, stunned. What's going on? You underestimate me, Mike. Dana fought to sound as cool and collected as she could, even though deep down she was a bundle of nerves. She couldn't believe she was confronting an actual killer, or a possible killer. You didn't really think I was going to come alone, did you? But I didn't do it. I swear to you. Mike's eyes were watered over. He always got that way when he was telling the truth. Dana moved close to Mike and took a good sniff. What's your problem? Nothing, it's just that, well, you don't smell the way I expected you to. Mike raised a brow. The look of incredulity slid across Mike's puzzled face. I had every reason to want that creep dead. He took Bianca away from me, and then he tried to blackmail her into staying with him. That low-life son of a gun. Mike huffed. I'm glad he's gone, but I can tell you this. I didn't have a strong enough motive to go through with it. Besides, I knew Bianca didn't really want me. You're right. You didn't do it, Dana concurred. And it had to have taken someone with an even stronger motive. A stronger motive? Yes, a stronger motive. Someone who had a lot to lose, or who lost a lot, like the life of a loved one. Your ex is still alive, but someone else who lost someone permanently would have more at stake, like the life of someone close to them. Besides, like I said before, you just don't smell the part." "Are you crazy?" Mike asked incredulously. Not all the time." Just then, Detective Evans said firmly, "Let's just say we might never find the real killer then." Like a bolt of lightning, a thought struck Dana, and her mind lit up with a eureka moment. She had her suspicions about something, but now she was more sure than ever. And now she understood that coincidence that happened on the keyboard when her slate was wiped clean, except for a few letters. The 4-letter mystery name wasn't Mike, was it? She thought back to the day when Brad's body was found. "Detective Evan, can I please have a word with you alone?" "Sure. What is it?" Dana sighed heavily when they went into the back room and closed the door. "I think you're a really nice guy, Evan. You are. But sometimes we do things that might be out of character for us." She took a good sniff of his chest. "What are you talking about? And why are you sniffing me?" "Well, first of all, the fact that you were so quick to make sure no one innocent gets pinned for this crime, for one thing, was incredibly noble of you." "So? Would you rather someone innocent go to jail for something they didn't do?" "Of course not. And I appreciate you standing up for me the other day. I really do. But you only wanted to make sure nobody wrong got pinned for this murder, because you know who did it." "I do?" "Yes, you do, Evan." He folded his arms across his chest. A puzzled expression slid across his face. "It must have hurt you badly when Brad, or Bradley Joe, as he was known then, killed your father." Evan's eyes widened in shock. "What are you talking about, Dana?" "I'm observant, Evan. That's one of my weak spots as well as my strength. Sometimes I wish I wasn't so much so. But it all suddenly clicked when I had done some research about an accident that was covered up by Brad's family, and information about the injured and deceased parties of that accident." Evan's face froze as he listened. Dana continued, "That surgical scar across the side of your face was caused by an accident when you were a passenger in a car, along with your father, that was hit. An accident caused by a drunk driver, a young, careless, college-age student who was intoxicated. The emotional scar, though, was far worse than the physical scar, wasn't it?" "And?" "Well, for one thing, you told me the day Brad died that his name was Bradley Joe Farmer. He changed his name to Brad and dropped the Joe, just in case anyone tried to make the connection to his past. Then he used his mother's maiden name. Only those from his small town in Connecticut would have known that. No one from around here. I did some checking up on him online to see how he could have so many enemies. Then I tried to go to Connecticut. Someone had cut my tires because they didn't want me to go. And that was you, wasn't it?" "Now, why would I do that?" "You always seem to be around at the right time, even when it isn't your shift. For example, at the Gazette. You were off that morning. Troy inadvertently confirmed it with me, but it didn't all click yet. You do your morning runs, and that's why you were tired and flushed. Then you splashed on your cologne like most guys do who didn't have time to shower. And the trail is near the town square, a good spot to be close to the station and the Gazette. No one would suspect you." Evan said nothing for a moment. He shoved his hands in his pockets and held his chin up. "And then there was that special scent. Your cologne to mask that you hadn't showered yet that morning. You put it on heavy at that time. My nose could not forget that scent. The same one I smelled when I walked into Bradley's office the day he died. Just moments after he died." "You really are observant, aren't you?" She nodded cautiously. "I realized that it was you that had me bugged. That's why you were able to tell Detective Troy that I was meddling in the case. You weren't really trying to help me solve the case after all, were you?" Disappointment clouded her voice. She really truly thought that she had found a good friend in Evan, someone who knew how she felt after losing her parents. "Oh no, you were trying to make sure I didn't solve the case," Dana continued. "How foolish of me to not realize at the time. But it all makes sense now, doesn't it? Because if I did solve the case, well, you know the rest." "I do?" "Yes, you do. And to be quite honest, I might be observant, but you helped quite a bit, Evan. I have to admit it. I might have been observant, but not as much as I wanted to be." "What do you mean by that?" "You let yourself slip yet again when you told me that a witness had told you that I had business to take care of." "You did say that." "I did, true. But I only said it to Mike, the mail guy. So, what is your problem then? My problem is that when I confronted Mike about it the next day at the pharmacy when he went to refill his prescription, Mike's innocent reply was, "Huh? What are you talking about?" So? I realized later that Mike probably didn't know what I was talking about. You never interviewed him. You were, however, nearby in the vicinity after you'd killed Brad, then tried to go around the back of the building and come back out, as if you hadn't been there earlier. I even remember when I briefly confronted Mike the mail guy at the town square monument outside the Gazette building. I remembered just before Mike appeared, the bushes near the monument were rattled. I assumed it had to be Mike, but it wasn't. It was you, hiding. You were listening. You hadn't expected us to be there. You overheard what I said, and as far as the security at the Gazette is concerned, you were very confident that the tapes would show nothing because you handled security there from time to time. You were a part-time security officer too. You moonlight like everyone else here. How did you know all this? Mac and I have been doing a lot of research. Mac? Never mind, it's a long story. Anyway, it surprised me at first, but being that it's a small town, you made sure that the security tapes would show nothing. You said you had taken the tape to run through them yourself, but what you had done was doctored the tape yourself, then returned it edited. But why? Why, Evan? Evan looked as if he was lost. He then drew a deep sigh. My father was everything to me, Evan admitted to her, on the verge of breaking down. I know how you feel, Dana said gently, her voice as soothing as she could sound. And she meant it. There was nothing like losing a parent. That brat Bradley Joe and his friends were out drinking and driving. That was one of the reasons I decided to become a cop. To help change the system. To save people's lives. Yes, he said, looking out the window. His old man got him off with his connections, and he avoided jail time. A lot of people protested at the time, and since his father had connections and investments here in Berry Cove, he shipped him off here and changed his name to his mother's maiden name. Of course, Daddy wasn't here to save him this time, was he? His old man got caught by the IRS for income tax evasion, and his mother too. I see. And well, anyway, at the time of my dad's death, I had testified in court and the judge dismissed it. I even told them what the plates were. Evan's eyes misted over. They told me I had gotten it from a newspaper description of Brad's car, and that I must have recited it from there. It must have really hurt to know you were telling the truth and your testimony wasn't counted. It wasn't counted as much then, but I made sure that one day it would. Everybody would respect what I had to say and when I said it. Wait a minute. I'd overheard Mrs. Baxter talking to her daughter at the memorial, saying something to the effect that the secret would be buried with him. So? Dana snapped her fingers as if she had just had an aha moment. Well, that's it. I knew there was something fishy about his hidden records, or at least the records his folks were trying to hide. Brad never changed his ways. When he moved to Berry Cove, he continued to drink and drive, and he was in the car with Bianca. That's it. They'd hit someone who later died. Now, that case had been a hit and run, but a part of Brad's car had been dented, so he used that against Bianca to say that he'd pin it on her. You knew that too, didn't you? Yes, I did. So? That's why it wasn't hard to get Bianca on your side in all of this. He turned to look at Dana, and she stepped back nervously. What was he going to do now that she knew his secret? But Detective Troy and the rest of them were in the next room. He wouldn't do anything stupid, would he? I've waited so long, all my life. I dreamed about this day when I would get even with Bradley Joe Farmer. I would make him pay. That was an awful long time to wait. And it was worth it. I didn't know that I was going to kill him that day, but I made sure that I was going to have a few words with him. And when I told him who I was, he laughed. He didn't even seem to care. It was as if it was some big joke to him. I thought he would have been scared. That couldn't have been good for Evan's male ego, or the hurt he was carrying all these years. Dana could see how this unfolded. Of course, it was still wrong. All wrong. So you killed him. Evan nodded. I had no choice. There's always a choice, Evan. You could have just requested for the case to be reopened. Not a chance. And you know something? I've avenged my father's death, so my work is done." "Not quite." Detective Troy came in, the look of disappointment on his face. "Man, there are so many ways to get justice. You should have known better. That is not one of them. I'm disappointed in you, Evan." "I'm not. I did what I had to do, and I'm not sorry. At least I didn't try to pin it on anyone." "But if you had come clean in the beginning, you could have saved a lot of us a lot of grief, Evan." Dana's voice was unwavering, though her heart was going a mile a minute. She was just glad this was all over, and that Detective Troy was there by her side. Boy, was she glad he was there now. How could she have gotten the guys all wrong? The good one was bad, and the bad one turned out to be good after all. Chapter 17. The following week, the grand opening, or reopening, of the Cozy Cupcakes Café was a huge success, to which Dana was very thankful. But she couldn't have done it without the help of her wonderful team and family. Balloons, prizes, and cupcakes with fun messages adorned the place. The representative from the Gazette was also there to cover the event. Her favorite saying was placed on the wrapper of the largest cupcake ever that sat in the center table. "A cupcake and a smoothie can solve about any problem." Troy was there by her side, lending a helping hand in the kitchen, to her surprise. The turnout was bigger than expected, and thanks to the advertisements, out-of-towners also showed up to celebrate, and of course, it didn't hurt that the mystery surrounding the now infamous cupcake murder was solved, and the CCC had a part in it. Detective Troy, as hot as ever, approached her. "You okay, Dana? You okay, Dana?" "Better than ever, and thank you so much for helping out back there with the wrappers. I really appreciate it." "Hey, no problem. That's what we're here for." And to think she'd been wrong about Troy this whole time. When she'd seen Troy that time in a technician outfit in town, he'd been undercover all right. Apparently, someone had stolen devices like listening bugs from the station, and he'd suspected his colleague Evan this whole time. Troy even went around to Dana's home that night to see if he could find the bug as evidence, since Evan claimed it had gone missing. Troy had suspected that the reason Evan knew Dana's every move was because he had her under his own private surveillance. Poor Troy had gotten a bump on the head after searching, but had to keep it under wraps, because Evan had friends at the police department, and he couldn't risk giving the assignment out, and neither could he risk Evan finding out that Troy was investigating him. And as for Troy blocking Evan away from her, he was simply trying to keep nefarious Evan off her back. And Troy then admitted that he really liked her a lot, but wasn't one to make his emotions known immediately, though Dana wished he would sometimes. "I don't ever want to see you pull a stunt like that again, Dana sweet." Troy's deep, silky voice was soft and assertive. Tingles danced around Dana's spine. She could listen to him speak forever. "What?" She feigned innocence. "Planning a grand opening of a cafe?" He grinned, and a cute dimple surfaced on his smooth skin. "You know what I mean," he said as he cocked a brow. He looked positively irresistible whenever he did that. "I can't say I promise," she shrugged innocently. He frowned. "Okay, fine." She gave in to his pleading expression. "I'll try not to get myself tangled up like that again if somebody happens to get murdered. But I couldn't just sit back while you guys try to figure out my fate. I mean, I just knew it had to be someone close to Brad or Bradley, and close to me who tried to set this whole thing up." "But that's what we're here for, Dana. To serve and protect." "Of course." "And you're here to serve your customers, right?" He grinned, and a cute dimple surfaced on his handsome cheek. "But on a more serious note, please don't let me see you ever pull a stunt like that again. There are some dangerous characters that I've encountered in my line of work, Dana. It's not all fun and games. Actually, it's never fun and games. But people see detective shows on TV and they think they can play cops and robbers or play detective, but they'd be playing with their lives." "Okay, Lieutenant Columbo." Dana gave a playful salute. His grin deepened, and he looked positively adorable. "Okay, I deserve that. Sorry to get all serious on you there. It's just that, he said. "It's just what?" she asked. "Well," he hesitated, combing his fingers through his delicious, mousy hair. "I know I probably shouldn't tell you this, but—" He arched a brow and looked irresistible. But what? Hey, wait a minute. That's not like you to hesitate. You're usually all confident and authoritative. What's wrong? Well, I've never quite met anyone like... Just then, his cell phone buzzed and annoyingly interrupted their private discussion. Troy reached in his pocket to answer it. Anyone like who? Like me? Is that what Troy was going to say? Oh, great. Now I'll never know how he truly feels about me. Not that I really want to be in another relationship right now. Not after what Ramon did to me. But oh boy, Troy was a million worlds apart from Ramon. Dang it. Now she'd never know. The opportunity had been missed by the sound of a smartphone ringing. Troy looked a bit distracted as he excused himself politely from Dana and spoke to whomever it was on the phone. Right, he said into the phone. Right, I've got you, don't worry. I'll be there as soon as I can. Love you too. What? Dana's face fell. She felt the sound of her heart smashing to the ground into 1,000 tiny pieces. So much for a chance to get to know Detective Troy any better. I love you? I'll be there soon? Well, duh, of course he would be taken. But what about all that talk about he's never met anyone quite like me? But then again, he didn't exactly finish his sentence now, did he? Maybe he was going to say something to the effect of, he's never met anyone quite annoying or quite obnoxious. Who knows? Dana fought to regain her composure and hide her private embarrassment. Well, that confirmed it then. All the good ones were taken. After Troy had finished his call, he glanced down at his watch and then turned his attention back to Dana. Sorry about that. Well, I've got to be going now. Yes, of course. Don't want to keep your wife waiting now, do you? A puzzled expression slid across his handsome face. My what? Your, wife or girlfriend, fiancé? Troy tilted his head back and laughter escaped his lips. My wife, girlfriend, or fiancé, huh? Dana nodded. She felt her insides melt like warm honey on a bun. She also felt a pang of embarrassment. I'm a complicated man, Dana. Relationships are not on my agenda right now. I've been through the ringer and back where that's concerned. Sorry to hear that. I can certainly relate to that, though. That was my mother on the phone, he said sincerely. She means the world to me. Oh, what a sweet thing to say. Now that's a good man. Your mother? Oh, yes, of course it was. Okay, so Dana had a bit more to learn about being a detective. She surely got that situation wrong, and thank heavens for that. But then again, he wasn't looking for a relationship, and neither was she, right? But why did her heart flutter in her chest whenever he was inches from her? Now that was a mystery. This has been Strawberry Cream Cupcake and Murder, a Dana Sweet Cozy Mystery, Book 1. Written by Anne S. Marie. Narrated by Skye Alley. Copyright 2015 by Anne S. Marie. Production copyright 2023 by Anne S. Marie.